decision. Now it just turned 9:31, so I'm devastated. All right. Oh, do we have a quorum? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Infrastructure Operations Committee of 12th of April 2022. Bit of a hybrid meeting again today, but that's fine. We'll make that work. Sarah and I are going to co-chair. I'll do the first couple of items up to the minutes, and then Sarah's going to take over and she'll chair the second half of the meeting, which is only the other 4 items. So really short agenda this morning, team. It's really basically due to the high number of staff in Eva Lisa's area that, you know, when reports and stuff were due, have been away or needing to isolate. So hopefully we have seen the peak of that. And it may mean an additional IOC meeting in June, because there was about 6, 7, 8 reports that had to be pulled, unfortunately. So that's why the agenda is incredibly light, which means a short meeting, let's hope. Jeff, stay quiet. Don't jinx it. But if we do need an extra meeting in June, we will keep everyone updated if that's the case. And we also have a workshop at 1:30 today. So, yeah. All right, so with that, I'll open the meeting, and there are apologies from Councillor Pascoe and Councillor Naidu-Rolfe for lateness, and Councillor McPherson and Councillor Hamilton for full meeting, also for lateness.
And I'm on remote.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Councillor Donovan also for lateness. Are there any other apologies?
Made it.
Councillor Donovan's here, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, you are. Oh, there we go. I can see you now. Yeah. Just see the good-looking people on the other side of the table.
One day I'll make it.
All right. So with that, I'll move that the apologies be received. Seconded by.
Happy to do.
Yep.
Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
There are none against. That's carried. All right. Confirmation of the agenda. There was an updated run sheet sent out this morning. And that just had an extra apology on there, and also just confirming through staff availability, we're going to bring item 7 up a couple and take that straight after item 5. So with that, I'll confirm, move that we confirm the agenda, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye. There are none against. That's carried. Is there any declarations of interest? No, there are none. Right, now we're going to go to public forum. We've got Phil Evans from Bike Action Hamilton speaking to the General Manager's report. Now, Phil has some key points to make, and I am allowing him 10 minutes for a variety of reasons. One, he is an organisation, although in chatting to governance, they've said that 10 minutes for organisation only applies when we're in proper hearing mode, but as chair I've made an exception for Phil here, so we will do that, but that 10 minutes would include any questions if anybody had any as well. So do we have Phil online?
We do. I'm just waiting for his camera and mic to flip over.
Just while we're there, is Norm asleep or is he frozen?
I think he's wide awake.
Is he moving?
And watching you.
I just frozen on my screen.
I'm alive and kicking, thank you.
There we go. Morning, Phil.
Good morning, Angela. Sorry about that. My camera was unplugged.
Ah, that's okay.
And then I unplugged my mouse and it all.
All right.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Okay, and
So-
thank you, Chair Angela, for allowing me a little bit of extra time today. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, good morning. I'm speaking today on behalf of Bike Action Hamilton, a group set up to undertake real action on the streets to protect bike lanes from driver intrusion. And I'm speaking to the biking and micro-mobility item in the General Manager's report. The issue of bike lane safety for cyclists is paramount, and the lack of safety across the city is deeply concerning. It's also complex and needs a cohesive short, medium, and long-term plan. Unfortunately, time doesn't allow me to say everything I need to say, so I'll be as brief as I can with these items. I've recently been asking staff for clarification about the issuing of fines for drivers parking vehicles across bike lanes in the suburbs when we provide photo evidence of the offences. I'm told that wardens must cite proof of the infringement before issuing fines. This goes against Section 139 of the Land Transport Act, which clearly states that the warden can issue a fine if they have reasonable grounds to suspect an offence is being or has been committed. I have sent in a reasonable number of photos of vehicles parked in bike lanes over the last few months, and footpaths as well. And in one response to my inquiries, was told that my complaints could be seen as frivolous and vexatious. Parking warden staff should be acting on all evidence of parking offences, especially when it puts people at risk of injury and death. That's what can happen when we are forced out into traffic because our bike lanes are blocked. At the last infrastructure meeting, I spoke about getting knocked off my bike by a driver turning left across my path and ending up in an ambulance with injuries to my knees, face, a dislocated shoulder, and ongoing issues with both hands. That happened on February the 15th while I was riding in a bike lane. On April the 1st, 12 days ago, while also riding in a bike lane, a mother picking up her kids from school thought she was more entitled to drive along the bike lane than me. So she bulldozed past me and used her car to push me out of the way. I landed hard on my left hand, aggravating the previous injury. She was heading to a left turn on a roundabout ahead. If I need to do anything involving lifting, I need to wear braces. In Auckland, in the last 2 weeks, 2 cyclists have been killed by drivers turning left. One entering a roundabout was hit by a driver of a truck and died. The other was killed when a driver cut through a bike lane on a left bend, while the cyclist was right there in front of them. On Monday, a cyclist in Nelson died from injuries sustained last Friday when a driver opened their car door without looking. Over the past 2 years, I have been trying to get this council to properly understand the real dangers of these 2 situations: left turns and car door zone bike lanes. And while a handful of intersections and lanes have been fixed, and I applaud that, this city contains hundreds of bike lanes that are not protected, where cyclists literally risk our lives because of dangerous driver attitudes and behaviours. I have done everything I can to get through to this council what needs to be done to protect us out on the road, but there is still far too little being done. I have asked for Martin Park's team to be doubled or tripled because their workload is massive. I have suggested a targeted rate be applied to raise funding from the very people who are the cause of the problem for cyclists, and that's drivers, and it is not being discussed. It seems any mention of drivers being held to account falls on deaf ears, meaning, as far as I can see, it is being made political. The situation on our roads is about life and death. That will happen again in Hamilton, and that will be partly the fault of this council for not acting properly. Many of the emails I write to council, Waka Kotahi and the government contain responses like, we take the safety of all road users seriously. Sorry, but that is absolute rubbish. If this council and those other agencies really adhered to that, I would not be getting injured, and those cyclists in Auckland and Nelson would not have died. And I'll include there the cyclists who have died in Hamilton, Michael Leach and the guy who was killed on Ruakura Road a few years ago. This is about life and death. Please let that sink in. People are dying and being injured because councils are not acting on this. You all make the rules and you set the agenda for staff to follow. So please do that. Properly discuss this issue and instruct the roading teams to prioritise the existing bike lanes throughout the city and protect our lives. Our safety should never be up to a vote on the whim of councillors on any particular day. Think about that. When you vote down a safety measure that will protect lives, or when you don't even discuss it, you are putting my life and all other cyclists' lives at risk. I can't think of any other activity in this city where council does so little regarding health and safety. I want to challenge you all to spend the next month riding a bike wherever you need to go. If you don't, then you have no idea what it is like, and you will be making life and death decisions with no real understanding of what we have to navigate. Your decisions determine how many people will suffer injuries or will die in the coming months and years. Do you want to play a part in the next person's death because you didn't act? Borrow the money if you have to, and when the whinging public start complaining, then tell them it is to stop people dying. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. I've got a question from Councillor Bunting.
Thank you. G'day, Phil. Thank you for your passionate submission. Good to see you here today. You and I have discussed this many, many times, and we kind of disagree a little bit on the off-road, on-road angle. And I wonder if we might have a little bit of that discussion today. Would it not be safer to have cycle lanes off-road where possible, for example, Gordonton Road, etc.? Your feelings are quite different, is that right? I just need to understand that.
No, Mark, I'm in favour where that is the only option, if there's space available to put bike lanes off-road, absolutely 100% agree with that.
Oh, okay.
I use shared paths wherever I can, but the fact is that the majority of bike lanes that already exist in this city cannot be retrofitted with bike lanes off to the side.
Yep.
There is no space for that. So this city must understand that on-road bike lanes are a vital necessity. And that also includes that until off-road bike lanes can be built and funded, obviously, what is there is what is needed to be used. We need to use those on-road bike lanes, but we need them to be safe.
Right. So
until bike lanes can be put off-road, we need to ride on the road. That's a given, and that needs to be understood. But they need to be safe.
Yeah. No, I understand the point you're making very clearly, and I'm just reflecting on, recent email dialogues where we only have a certain amount of money, and I know how that pokes the beehive a little bit at you, and I don't intend to. But would you rather spend the money on getting off-road paths or building barriers on roads, if you had to make that choice?
If I had to make the choice right now for the next few years, is make safe what's already there.
Okay.
Make it safe, because in the last 2 months, I've been hit twice. I've been knocked off my bike twice. And I've been begging and pleading this council to make these bike lanes safe, to stop drivers intruding into our space. That's the problem. Cycle ones do that. They're quick, they're easy, they're put in there, they stop the vehicles from intruding in our space. And it's left turns that are the problem. And the fact that drivers drive along bike lanes. I can probably guarantee that every councillor and every staff member of council has in the last week driven along a bike lane in a lane of traffic in rush hour to get to a left turn at an intersection or round that.
Yeah, but the cycle ones don't stop the doors, right?
But our door zones are the next thing.
Yeah, okay, thanks Phil. We'll carry this on offline, I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bunting. We are at 10 minutes, so last question, Councillor Donovan.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Chair Angela.
It wasn't a major question. I'll be as quick as I can. But Phil, I'm a recent newly elected member, and I've actually started riding my bike a little bit more. And I concur with what you're saying. I saw some interesting sights this morning. Actually, I was out on my bike, and I know exactly what you mean by the cycle lanes. But Bunty nicked my question about the cycle wands. But just in regard to the cycle wands, we still have to pay consideration towards trucks, don't we? Because they're moving around the city as well, and probably more frequently now with the increase in logistics and freight that's going to be carted around the city as well. So what do we do in terms of their presence on the road? Is it a driver education in your perspective, or from your perspective, or is it, because we can't physically make the roads wider, can we? But I know that trucks have a real issue with those wands.
Okay, the issue there is that whether it's a truck, a long semi and trailer, or a round the town truck, or a vehicle, or a car, or a motorbike, the white lines on either side of the traffic lane are the lane for traffic. Trucks, motorbikes, cars, everything. That white line on the left side of a traffic lane is a no-go area. Do not drive across it. It is very, very, very simple. The lanes are there to keep people in their lanes. So if a truck needs to drive a crossover into a bike lane, he is not driving to his lane. Those lanes are designed for trucks. If he physically can't stay in his own lane, then he is in the wrong road. He needs to go on another road. But that white lane that protects, that is on the road between the traffic lane and the bike lane, I mean, every time I go out riding, vehicles just drift across that white line. That is illegal. It is illegal to drive along a bike lane. And if you've got two wheels in that bike lane, that is illegal. So I don't understand. There is no excuse. And yes, it is driver education that is desperately needed. Waka Kotahi aren't doing it. Police aren't enforcing this. And neither are council by putting in something to stop the vehicles. That's also might be worth noting that the orange cycle ones can be driven over. They are made of rubber. They used to be called hit sticks. But that shouldn't be, I mean, if necessary and they need to knock them out of the way a little bit, then they're still going to survive. But they shouldn't be going anywhere near them anyway. Their lane is clearly marked.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's all the questions we have today. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate your sharing your experiences with us and your thoughts as well. And we will no doubt have a discussion with elected members when we get to the General Manager's report. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll be listening to that.
All right. So let's move on. We're going to go to the minutes, item 5, which is on page 6 of diligence. And this is the minutes of the 24th of February 2022 IOC committee. I will move that those minutes are a true and accurate record. Seconded by Councillor Van Osten. Thank you. Is there any inaccuracies anybody needed to point out? There are none. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That's everyone in the chamber. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, now we're going to go to item 7, which is on page 35, and this is a regular update for our water stimulus project delivery. So we have Myri.
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
Hello. Morena tātou. So today's report is just a regular update on the Three Waters Reform Stimulus Program. So overall, the program is progressing really well. We have a high level of expenditure occurring at the moment, and that's reflective of the completion or moving towards the completion of many of the projects and completion of the program as a whole in June this year. So at the end of February, we had spent just shy of $13.2 million, and that's equivalent to about 75% completion of the program. But as of April, so as of yesterday when I checked in, we had actually incurred $14.2 million. So as I said, high level of expenditure currently occurring, because that's 82% of the program that's complete. In paragraph 31, I refer to a recent instalment of a further $1.989 million of stimulus grant that we've received. So that means that we now have access to $15.3 million, or 80% or 88% of the total stimulus funding available to Hamilton City Council. The next funding instalment will be requested later this month, and that will be after we have submitted the Q6 report, which is actually due on Thursday. As we are approaching the end of the program, I've made a slight change to the report and provided a lot more information on each of the projects, and that can be found in attachment 1, which is on page 41 of Diligent. So hopefully that additional detail provides some really good insight and context around some of the projects that have been undertaken and some of the great outcomes that we are achieving as a result of this program of works. So at that point, I will happily take the report as read and answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Sorry for coughing just then, everyone. I thought I was on mute. Are there any questions? I have a couple. Mangai Hill. I can go first.
Tēnā koutou. Kia ora, Marie. What a fantastic report, and really proud to see a number of key achievements achieved. I just want to ask a question in regards to He Pou Manawa Ora. With the number of fantastic projects being achieved, is there alignment to He Pou Manawa Ora and how that's been achieved?
I guess when this program was initiated and the projects were selected, it was prior to He Pou Manawa Ora being finalised. But I think there are some strong alignments there, and where a lot of this work is not just coming to completion at the end of this program. It will be ongoing, and we can look to better improve those alignments and linkages between these projects or these outcomes and He Pou Manawa Ora.
Yeah, so there's real strong alignment to the Pou within He Pou Manawa Ora, and so you're actually ticking the box and achieving some real good outcomes, which do also kick goals in He Pou Manawa Ora as our kaupapa for cultural wellbeing. So some real strong alignment there, so that'll be a good suggestion. There's another point. Can I just, there's acknowledgements to Mātauranga Māori in the cultural aspects of the projects. Just quickly, could you explain what does Mātauranga Māori mean in the context of Māori in the project?
So the one that I guess immediately comes to mind is in our education project, and that is where we've actually come up with a curriculum activity that is looking specifically at Māori of water. So it's using the story of Papa Nua Uku and Rangamarie, and explaining what Māori actually means. And it's a pretty cool little curriculum activity, and there's been a lot of interest. It's been rolled out at one school so far, and they have come back with incredible feedback to say just how valuable it was, and they're looking to share that resource out wider outside of Hamilton and the Waikato region.
Well done. Congratulations. I'm on the governance group for the Waikato Regional Council project, and so there's real strong synergy. I'm sure you met Papa Tuanuku and Ranginui
Yes,
Waikukupu, so I acknowledge that. Well done. Just a quick suggestion. It would be great if the school could also develop a Māori app, use technology and our Western knowledge to combine with Mātauranga Māori to develop a Māori app that aligns to not only water, but also there's a real strong opportunity to protect and provide for the Māori o te pika pika and the long-tail back. So just some food for thought in terms of advancing this wonderful kaupapa. Thank you and well done.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Norm. Question from Mayor Paula in the chamber, and then Councillor Thompson after that. Mayor Paula.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the Rotokauri projects, are those all associated with Stage 1 development Rotokauri, or are they coming faster because of the consent for Charles Marr and things in development coming on more quickly?
So the Greenway project, so that's looking at the designation consent conditions, that is in support of the Greenway creation, so that is future LTP investment. So it's basically supporting the progress of that future capital works and development of the Greenway. So
that's what I thought it might be. So we're not doing any other substantial work in Rotokauri for a while, though, are we? Not until the outer years of the LTP?
No, so this is all just supporting work, getting those building blocks in place so that that future work can be progressed.
Okay, so it's getting it in good time rather than waiting to the
that's right.
last bit. There was another one, sorry, hang on. The resilience study, that's to reduce the potential for incidences of harm from water spills, etc. Is that what that one is?
Yeah, it's just basically ensuring that that we're well prepared. So a couple of areas in that particular project that we're focused on are emergency plans, making sure that our range of emergency plans are correct, that we're identifying our risks really well, that we understand the risks associated with our suppliers and our supply chains, because that could inform future procurement arrangements. It's also looking at power and telecommunications, which has informed some of the proposals that have been put forward in the annual plan. So it is, a lot of it is just trying to understand what are our risks and how well placed are we for those, to make sure that that we're not caught resting on our laurels. So yeah.
Okay. And the Low River contingency.
Yes.
Can you just talk us through that? Because I know that with climate, and actually the shot over in Queenstown is very low. You can't even run jet boat rides at the moment. I just found out. Interesting. But anyway, just in terms of what do we know about the low river levels, how often are we likely do we do some work on how likely we're to experience them now? Because we're a whole system right from Taupō to...
That's right.
It's complicated, I know. But
yeah, so we're very dependent on the levels in Lake Taupō, and that will determine whether what the level in the Waikato River actually is. So this project was all about being able to deploy and trial the infrastructure that was built back in 2016 to make sure that we could respond if the river levels actually dropped to a level that we're unable to abstract water from the river. So since 2016, we've not got to a situation where we've actively had to use that plan. We do expect that to be an increasing sort of occurrence in the future, but it was always intended that this low-level contingency emergency provision was an interim step to a more substantial infrastructure arrangement in the future. So but we're just going through the process of actually understanding what the best option that might be, and that could be lowering our intake or a separate intake or a different type of intake to the treatment plant. So
Yeah, so that kind of leads me to my very final question, Madam Chair, which is, so I guess we can foresee the need somewhere down the outer years of this LTP or in the beginning of the next LTP to do a significant upgrade to safely protect our water supply in those low river situations. Taupo was below its required level like summer before last for quite some time, wasn't it? And they had to build reserves in the river.
yes, Lake Taupo has dropped to quite low levels on several occasions, and we've been sort of 6 to 8 weeks away from having to deploy our low river contingency. So
6 to 8 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got pretty close.
And I understand that the only way we
years.
get through that is the power companies make adjustments through their dam systems to let. Yeah.
That's right. But they do have consent conditions that guide them on how they operate their system, and we work in conjunction with all the other upstream river users to make sure that we minimise that risk to Hamilton. So
I imagine that putting a future-proof arrangement around it won't come cheap if we have to do extra pumping. It's not just a little add-on of a new pump, is it? So.
No, it's the long-term solution is likely to be a completely different intake structure. So at the moment our intake structure is fixed on the side of the Waikato River, and what a permanent arrangement is likely to be is a whole new intake structure that maybe goes along the bottom of the Waikato River.
Yeah.
So
and that sorry, it was our last question, but I thought of another one. That intake, that line from the treatment plant across near the gardens, that was the one that was impacted by the earthquake, wasn't it? And put us at a different sort of risk.
So that was actually a supply pipe that, so that's our main eastern bulk main that goes under the Waikato River.
That's right. So, but it comes from the water treatment plant to the east, and I was just making the point that I think that we also have that kind of resilience to consider.
Yes.
Natural events like an earthquake or something, because it actually did happen already, right?
Yes, and part of one of the projects in this program of works in our asset data project is actually looking at asset criticality, and so it's looking at our critical assets and making sure we've identified those, and that will also drive emergency planning and emergency response contingencies to put in place to ensure that those critical assets don't get impacted by natural or unnatural events.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Paula. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mary. I had a couple of quick questions. I loved the update report. It was really helpful way to kind of get a view of all the projects. I'm just wondering, there'll be quite a bit of interest in the access paths going in where we're doing the work in the gully. Will there be kind of an opening or blessing or something and some signs for residents to be able to see, hey, now we've got some additional access here for, I guess, walking and things?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I'd have to check with our project manager, but that's a great idea. So I will definitely take that back to the project team.
Cool. Yeah, and I've also heard lots of excitement over in Mangaiti. So lots of people are waiting for these paths to open. So that would be great. I did have another question, but seems to be a common thing that I forget what I'm doing. No, water sustainability, the strategy. I was just wondering, will that come to a briefing, or what's the plan for that? Because it sounds like a really interesting and important piece of work, and obviously we're running pretty close to the end of the term. But
yeah, it's definitely a very interesting piece of work, and yes, we are intending on bringing it to elected members to through a briefing as such. We're just trying to go through the logistics of when that will be.
Okay.
But I guess the important thing to understand with that project in particular, it's not just one that ends on the 30th of June. It is something that will continue on, and we can continue to refine and build on the work that has been done. So we will definitely want to engage with elected members on that one.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm just going to try and take a different current on this, if you pardon the terrible pun. Years ago, and I remember being involved in, we bought a very expensive barge to cope with lower levels that Mayor Paula was talking about with some great alarm. How often have we used it?
So that was back in 2016,
Yeah.
and that's when the current contingency infrastructure was put in place.
Yeah.
We've not had to use that actively to supply the city.
Right.
And so this project and this program of works was all about just making sure it was still operational and that it was still ready to be used and rolled out.
Right, so we can use that when the water level gets low to ensure our supply. But we have, and I'm certainly not being political about this, but how much was it?
Oh gosh, I can't remember the exact figure.
Close to 10 million or something around that, wasn't it? It was.
I know it wasn't quite that much. I think it was around 2 to 3 million, but I can confirm that. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just, never, and it's and this. I guess I'm a little bit worried as a governor that we're using all our available facilities appropriately before we race out and effectively scare people into buying more. So, are you doing that sort of body of work to make sure it's being used, or that what we've got is right? Because who's to say we don't spend a whole lot more money buying stuff we also don't use?
I guess in this particular instance, this is, from my perspective, the investment in that infrastructure has been very good.
Right.
I think if we did experience low levels in the Waikato River, basically that would stop our ability to supply water to Hamilton residents.
Yep.
So I think
Say again, sorry,
if the Waikato River dropped to a level where we could not abstract water, we would not be able to supply Hamilton with water.
But it hasn't got to a level where we've needed to use the barge yet, right? Which is why we got it.
Not yet, no.
Right.
But as I said to Mayor Paula, we've come within weeks of needing to deploy that.
So say we had to use barge face, because I just wanted to throw that in. Should we, how long have we got before it gets too low to even use that?
That is, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but what the barge does is it moves it out into a much deeper part of the river.
Yeah, and sucks up the.
So it would have to be quite a substantial drop for the barge not to be effective in supplying water to the.
Almost dried up.
Oh well, we would still need 1 or 2 metres, but that deeper part of the river is probably 7 to 8 metres deep.
Yeah.
And so you've got a lot of leeway there.
So I appreciate, this is the last sort of way I'll go down this angle, but I appreciate we're trying to look at our resilience of our internal supply. I get that.
Yep.
But are we not just spending money on top of spending money to make sure we have a supply that we haven't even tried out yet? Does that make sense? So are we just basically parking up that barge and not using it and trying other ways? Because I've heard bandied around quite a bit.
Yeah, and I guess that was the intent with this project, was to actually sort of brush it off and make sure that it was still in a functional state, and that the team were all trained and ready to actually deploy it.
Yeah.
Because it could happen any summer.
And to put it in, Chair, last question. To put it in the water is quite expensive as well, isn't it? We have to crane it in, and
Yes.
what does that cost to put it in?
So this project in total was $150,000.
Right.
And I would say about $100,000 of that was for the actual deployment. There were extra pumps that were bought to just increase the capacity of that infrastructure from providing 70 million litres per day up to a maximum of 90 million litres per day.
Yep.
And that's important because during summer, when we're likely to see this kind of effect, that is just above what we would normally use on a day-to-day basis in summer.
So we're budgeting to use that if we need to?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor. Really good questions. I've got two on different topics, but just following on with the barge, I think I recall, Myri, twice where we have actually water level for the river has been quite critical in the past. I think we've lowered it twice in anticipation of nearly being, I think it was twice, wasn't it? Nearly having to use it. So it was that right?
Yes, and basically the new sort of contingency plan with the new floating platform means that we can respond faster. So previously when we had just a very small little barge, it was basically a very small barge, we needed a lot longer. So we needed a 6 to 8 week window to actually deploy that plan, but we've revised the plan and now it only takes, we can deploy it within 2 weeks. So it means that we don't have to roll it out as early. So in the past, we've actually deployed it a lot earlier because there was, it basically took longer.
Just noting that we didn't own that barge, and so we actually couldn't be guaranteed that.
So who owned the barge?
It was through
I think it was through Downer.
Yeah, it was through a consultant contractor. So basically, the barge that you're referencing that we previously had wasn't ours.
The previous one, yeah. Well,
Yeah, so
we
we
own
had
Bargy
to.
We do own it.
Yeah, and we were basically competing with others to have that barge. So if it was in use, it wouldn't be available.
Yeah, got it. No, but we have got it, yeah. Thanks.
Myri, when we did, because I remember all this conversation years ago prior to us having a plan B in with looking at climate change in our hot summers, we did alongside this, I'm pretty sure we did, I'm not asking you to remember but the figure, but we did do some work on the alternative option, which was doing brand new or moving the intake or outtake pipe, whatever you call it. And that was like mind-bogglingly expensive.
Yes, that's correct. I can't remember the exact figures, but that it is millions and millions of dollars that would be required to upgrade our intake structure.
Okay, cool. All right, so just two questions from me, and concur with Councillor Thompson. It's a great report. I did notice you'd changed it because I'm like an eagle eye on these things because I'm loving this whole stimulus package opportunities that it gave us. Rainwater and greywater case study. Now I know that it says in the report this is being considered alongside other technical work relating to the district plan, but this was one of the things that I put on, into this proposal. Well, where will we have that discussion and see the outcome and see? I think I read the Victoria or the Western Australia report anyway. I didn't like it. I didn't like what it said. But where will we have that discussion? Would we have that in Councillor Gallagher's committee first, and would that be this term, or where will we have a really good discussion where we can hopefully make some decisions?
Well, I was hoping to combine it with the sustainability strategy and actually bring those together, because I see that the rainwater incentivisation is almost a sort of subset of the sustainability strategy. It's almost an action that comes out of a strategy focused on sustainability. So I'm quite happy. I was thinking that, or going to propose that we started off with a briefing, but happy to take it to a committee if that is preferred.
No, briefing would, because I'll read all of those reports and all of your findings and everything, because this is dear to my heart, this project. So if that works for the chair of Environment Committee, then that'd be great. I look forward to that. And second question, sorry, Martin.
I said I will have a deep, meaningful discussion with my deputy chair.
And then just on page 51, on the work, great work, water leak detection. And I see how you've split them into the leaks found in the Dinsdale area, Templeview and Ruakiwi. Kind of a lot less than I was expecting, I guess, but in terms of the number of leaks, given the size of the city. But is the dollar figure, Mairi, is that 1 point something million or 3 point something million?
Which dollar figure are you looking at?
I'm on page 51 and I'm looking at the map. And so, for example, it says the Dinsdale Water Supply Zone, 65 kilometres of pipes checked, 44 leaks found. And then it's got 1,812 square metres of water a year saved or more, and it's got a dollar amount, 3351. I'm assuming that's 3.3 million?
No, that is just thousand.
Oh, well, that's great.
That's very, very small. But I guess that is, we used the commercial rate for water just to give an indication. And those leakage rates are estimates based on what's been found. So,
Okay, well, because when I first read it, I thought 1,000. That's pretty amazing, actually, to have so little. But we still haven't done the whole city, right? So those are only 3 zones.
Yeah, so we targeted I guess some of the older areas of the city to get an understanding of just what level of leakage we might find. But yeah, it's a tip of an iceberg in terms of what's been done, and a lot more work needs to be done in that space.
Tip of the iceberg in terms of the work, not the leaks that you're imagining you'll find.
Yeah, that's right, the work.
Based on this result, I was very pleasantly surprised. That's why I thought, crikey, I better check that that's not millions of dollars, because then we have a significant problem. It's thousands. So, boy, was that a project worthwhile. So thank you for that. All right, so doesn't appear to be any further questions, no? Okay, let's move to it's just to receive the report on page 35. I will move that the report be received, seconded by Mongo Hill. Is there any debate? I just quickly, I'll come to Councillor Bunting. Just quickly, you know, I'm very critical of some things this term that the government has passed down to us, but I'm also really fair in my comments, and I wholeheartedly have supported this. And this was a stimulus package, I think, that came out of 2020. It was directly targeted to our waters, our 3 waters. And boy, when you look at the list of projects that we've been able to achieve, and the work that we wouldn't have been able to do, it's quite significant, and in my view, all incredibly positive. And Mairi, so thank you to you and all of your team that's worked on this. I can't wait to see the outcome of the rainwater tank one and the sustainability strategy. Just really awesome work. So thank you. Councillor Bunting?
Thank you, Chair Angela. I also commend the report. I think it's fantastic. But as a governor, I'm just watching very closely. I remember the great hoopla when the Bargee Mitch Barge face was built, and I found the report and stuff actually from Aaron Lehman about a very entertaining debate about it. Actually, it was 2.34 million. It was at the same time we approved the $21 million Rotatuna Reservoir, the same meeting, and one councillor, Tooman, at that point questioned the cost and said maybe we should build a dam instead, and Councillor Wilson replied, which part of Hamilton would you like to flood? So it sounded like it, and this was way back in 2015. So I guess the point I'm making is that, look, we've got the kit. The other interesting thing in that article is to retrieve the water when it got down to that level, it was $30,000 each time, and now we're saying it's $100,000 each time. So as a governor, I'm just watching very carefully. There's a lot of alarm speak at the moment, and I'm not denying climate change by any means, I'm not going there, but we need to be very, very pragmatic about what we're doing as well, and just keep an eye on these expenses to make sure that we're not buying contingency to cover our contingency. Let's use what we've got, and just make sure our eyes are wide open as we go into this. But I think it's great work, but I just wanted to exercise that voice of caution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other debate?
Yeah, me. Oh, what happened to me?
Oh,
I am there. Okay, sorry. Just on that, thank you. Also, a very good report. I love the way that I was going to say it floats up, but it was an unintended pun. But it floats to the surface the key issues and costs around water infrastructure, because, you know, one of the hardest things being a city politician is that playgrounds are, like we were at the beautiful playground yesterday, that's very visible, it's very obvious to the public. You put a new shiny playground in, they enjoy it and they value it, but all the pipes and bits and pieces underneath the city that keep the city running and growing, they don't see and they don't necessarily understand as much, and they're incredibly expensive. Taking on board what Mark says, we do have to always check and recheck that we're doing the very best we can, and I believe the staff are, despite the barge face issue. I think we do have to err on the side of caution, because the cost of not being able to supply water to the city would be unbelievable, and the impact on public health would be unbelievable, and the way it would just grind our city to a halt would be unbelievable. So we do need to make sure that we protect for the future our water supplies as best we can. And we do at the moment have the one intake, and we have the reservoirs that we've spent quite a bit of money on to protect supply in different parts of the city. We did a field trip and stood on top of those, and that was really awesome to see the one in Ruakura and how that really gives resilience to our system. We don't want to underinvest, we don't want to overinvest, that's true. But we've got a bow wave of growth coming. We've got more and more people choosing to come in the city. Every person who comes to the city, builds a new house, needs a new water supply. So going back to Angela's comments, I'm really excited about the work that Sarah and Angela, you've been talking about, the rainwater tanks, the grey water systems, new subdivisions being water-wise, because I believe as a city, we're still quite high per capita of water use compared to some other places. We're certainly, each person uses more water than an Aucklander does. So we have to keep those things in mind and challenge ourselves to invest wisely and to do the right thing with water, because water is the most precious and valuable personal, community and economic resource that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
I don't want to go over the other previous points, which are good and valid points. I'll just make an observation. You have an LTP that is coming up. You have an annual plan which you're looking at. And this report underscores, both for Mari and Eva-Lisa and the staff team, right from the people who put the pipes in to the high-level intellectual grunt that you want from our staff in Hamilton's fourth largest metro. Do not short-change your staffing resource. And I know that's not easy in terms of the budget and all that, but this report to me is all about investing in some intellectual capacity, some professional capacity, and I just want to compliment our team, but from a democratically elected representative point of view around this table, when you do come to your next LTP, just make sure that you invest in that intellectual capital infrastructure for these ongoing problems. But obviously, well done, and I certainly acknowledge the totality of the contribution, as I said, right from the person who's putting in the pipes to our management team as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. There's no more debate. I have to do a right of reply to present a different side to my good friend Councillor Bunting's comments on Adi McBargy face, or whatever you called it. Look, I think it's really good governance to have a plan B in this particular area. And we have to take it in context as well. We sit at water alert levels. We get into them earlier every year. They seem to last longer every year. We're still in water alert level 3, much to my disgust. And last summer, I think it was last summer, we got, or the one before, we got the closest we had ever been for moving to an alert level 4. And we don't have these kinds of big project contingencies for every single service that we deliver for the city, but this is water, as the Mayor has said. And I certainly wouldn't want to imagine being part of a council, who would ever consider not having a plan B for a life supporting service. I appreciate what the due diligence that Councillor Bunting was doing, however, and really good comments and debate on this item, so thank you. All right, so that's it, and let's go to the vote. We'll do it on the show of hands. I can see everyone except for Councillor Gallagher and Mayor Paula, but Narelle can see them. So that looks like, sorry, raise your hands. Hi, Martin. That's been carried. Thank you, everyone. Okay, look, I know it's only 10:30, but we're nearly finished. We're just going to take a quick 5 minutes. So Councillor Thompson's going to take over for the remainder of the meeting. We'll have a quick 5-minute pit stop, and then she can move into the chair's role. Thanks, everyone.
We're almost there, Maxine. Thank you.
I don't think she's there yet.
Right.
Oh, yes, she is.
Okay, we're ready to go. Thanks, everyone. All right, we're just dealing with device issues. Right, we're on to the General Manager's report. So I think the best thing is to just take this piece by piece. So we'll first look, I'll just call out each section, and if anyone has a question on that section, then we'll take it at that point. Items, item 6, sorry, we're back, okay, we're going back to item 6 first. Public transport update. Do we have our external presenters on Zoom? Cool. Thank you. Hi, Andrew and Trudy. Well, we've got Andrew here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Narrowly.
Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to present. The floor is yours.
Okay, I will just share my screen. Can you see that?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you for inviting us along today to talk to you about public transport. The last time I believe that this committee was briefed was about 6 months ago by my colleague Andrew Wilton. So Andrew, who was at the time public transport manager, has temporarily stepped aside to undertake a strategic projects role lead. So he's going to be leading on the development of the regional public transport plan, electric strategy for Hamilton and other important projects. We have an acting public transport manager. So I'd like to introduce Trudy Knight, who is with us today.
Mm-hmm. Hello, everyone.
But I will be taking you through our update on public transport, if I can get the screen to move. There we go. So today, an update for you on some of the patronage trends that we've seen over the past couple of years, and really the big influence on that has been, of course, COVID-19. Also give you an update on Te Huia, our on-demand public transport initiatives in the city, and also our frequent route improvements, but not necessarily in that order. I think this slide is fairly self-explanatory. It shows our patronage trend over longer term, dating back to 2002. You can see this is when the first lockdown happened, drastic reduction in patronage, down from about 4 million boardings per annum down to just under 3. So this is a rolling 12-month average. So we've smoothed out some of the peaks and troughs that you get with seasonal variation on this graph. You can see that there was a small recovery before the latest bout of Delta / Omicron hit us towards the end of last year. And after that, we saw again quite a dramatic reduction in bus patronage for the months up to, I believe this graph covers the months up to February this year. We've definitely lost a lot of patronage over the past year. We're running roughly about 30% down on patronage compared to pre-COVID levels. And that's obviously having a knock-on effect in terms of our fare box revenue as well. Putting some financial pressure on regional council. I just wanted to show you, I thought that this was quite interesting, the trend over time of our urban routes compared to our frequent bus routes. So for the first time in the last quarter of 2021, we had more trips on the Comet and Orbiter combined than all of the other bus routes that we have in Hamilton. And we've seen that those frequent routes have been more resilient in the face of lockdowns than have our more infrequent routes. So just a reminder by what we mean by frequent and infrequent. So frequent to us is every 15 minutes or more frequent. We have a network currently which provides a very coverage orientated view of providing bus services. So this is providing a bus service every half hour or less over a greater area of the city, which typically means shorter walking distances, but longer wait times because the buses are running less frequently. So the evidence suggests that if we want to move to getting more bums on seats, getting more patronage on our bus services, then we need to give people a product that's attractive and that's easy to use. And we know that that is a big part of that is providing frequent services that you can turn up a bus stop and you know that there's going to be a bus that'll come along within in a few minutes. So inevitably that means reprioritizing some of the resources that we've got deployed, and we've already made steps towards doing that. So the Comet was a major initiative for us, and taking a number of 3 different routes in Hamilton, providing cross-city link every 15 minutes, and it has been very successful and more successful than any other route that we've been operating, or should I say, any other initiative that we've launched over the past couple of years. You can see that we've moved from about 10% overall patronage on the Comet when we in the first couple of months after we launched it to around about 14% now. And that's us not having made any significant changes to that route over that period. So we are on a pathway that we want to be delivering more frequent bus services, but there have been a few bumps in the road and not insubstantial hurdles. In terms of the numbers of drivers that we have available to deliver these services. So currently we are running on reduced timetables across much of the city, although the Comet and Orbiter are operating on their normal timetables. What we've tried to do is prioritise bus services to run around the busiest periods, so there's the fewest number of people who are affected by the shortfall in drivers, but we are around 20% short of a full contingent of bus drivers at the moment. So not only does that make running our existing timetables quite challenging, but it also means that very, very difficult to initiate any service improvements that we were planning to make. So the Meteor should have happened by now. It's been put back a number of times due to, the Meteor, and I should probably introduce what we mean by the Meteor, for those who might not be familiar. So the Meteor is this new east-west high frequency route that would run from Rotokauri Hub through Dinsdale and the CBD out through Clyde Street and towards the University and Ruakura. That would be running every 15 minutes, and that was going to be the next cab off the rank in terms of frequent route improvements after the Comet. But we are struggling at the moment to get enough drivers to actually implement that. It was pushed back from last year initially to the beginning of this year. it looks now like we'll struggle to deliver that within the next few months. I should say that this table up here, in terms of the plan to deal with the driver shortage, it's very much a draft. We did commit at the last Regional Connections Committee to convening a group with Hamilton City Councillors to look at the best way to phase some of these improvements. My suggestion was that we could potentially launch the Meteor as a lower frequency, but I think that was, it's fair to say, that was treated with a degree of trepidation, and perhaps understandably by some of the members of the Regional Connections Committee a few weeks ago. Just an update on the Comet as well. The plan is for the Comet to go from a 15-minute frequency to every 10 minutes. And with that 10 minutes, we'll have 3 branches branching through Glenview, Mahoe and Fitzroy. And that is anchored around the new Glenview bus hub, which Waka Kotahi are in the final design phases of procuring, and should be open by October, November. So that is when we would be looking to make service changes to the Meteor to tie in with that. We've also got plans for the Rototuna Rocket. So it's frequent bus service every 15 minutes out to Rototuna area. But again, because of the driver shortage, it's currently on hold, pending more certainty around driver availability and phasing of various other initiatives. I'll hand over to Trudy at this point to talk about on-demand public transport and some of the initiatives that we've got going in Hamilton at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Andy, for that. Yes, I guess on-demand public transport concept has been sort of battered around for some time now. In principle, we would have liked to have launched this last year, but I guess with external factors of COVID, etc., we did have challenges with securing fleet, and by default did delay our rollout of the on-demand. However, and I'm hoping that many of you have seen sort of the vans around Hamilton, etc. We'll show you a picture. There we go. There. But yes, we've did commit to a soft launch back end of last year. It was a free sort of trial initially, just to get some exposure, of the vehicles, and also just a change in mindset for people in terms of to book this particular transport. You do need to download an app and work with the technology there. However, that said, when I say we launched or did a soft launch, I think we incorporated Hamilton City Council employees on that, as well as ourselves and Waka Kotahi at the time. And since then, we've gone wider sort of to the public space, but actually not being too aggressive with our marketing at the moment. But yes, that will come. And I guess as Andy has been updating you with the frequent service improvements, it's a flavour of the challenge with driver shortage at the moment, which also has to come into play. So yeah, but look, a little bit firstly on the app. So Andy, if you can just move to the app. So we've had a really good uptake on passengers downloading the app, and we can talk about that later. But also what it does do, and just to point out, we've got 6 vehicles at the moment in the fleet. 4 are wheelchair accessible, 2 are not. We have gone with that configuration because the lead time on the wheelchair accessible vehicles is extremely long. Coming out of Germany, they're Mercedes Sprinters. So the other two are transit vans. But what we have done to support sort of wheelchair users and the requirement to ensure that the right vehicle is deployed for those bookings is that within the application, the passenger has the ability to sort of switch on that profile where a wheelchair accessible vehicle is required. So yeah, so that is working well. And currently we've also been given the ability now to sort of market directly through the app, and because we have quite a reasonable uptake on that, we'll be able to do some sort of targeted messaging as well. So I guess to the specifics, and actually just that picture there is an example of the wheelchair accessible vehicle. But what have we launched? So back in December, we did launch the CBD evening pilot. And initially we were running this, we say 6 p.m. to 4 a.m, but initially we had to limit it to midnight, due to some driver shortage, and then obviously what's been happening with COVID and Omicron. However, it has been well received. We've had some really good sort of customer feedback and anecdotal sort of feedback, and we're sort of managing or getting that feedback on a weekly basis after the weekend prior. In terms of so the pricing, well, initially, we were setting it at $2 per person. But now with the government initiative of 50% off through to June, it's a really good value for money. So yes, but as I say, the trial is actually still free at the moment, but in the coming 3 to 4 weeks, we will be introducing the fare charging. We've had some challenges with just the payment gateway and the integration piece that supports that. So Andy, if you could just kindly move on to the airport pilot. So the other focus that we've had is serving the airport directly from the CBD. So in terms of this, it is a point-to-point from the transport centre. People would take the journey through to the airport and vice versa. But once again, through the booking system and the app, pricing's aligned to the fare zone pricing that we have on public transport, and that will come into play, as I mentioned, shortly. This trial, it is covering the hours between 9:30 a.m. and 4 p.m, and that's 7 days a week. And yes, we did launch this in February. So we're monitoring that closely. We can absolutely do some more targeted marketing on that, etc. But yes, to date, we've also had some really good feedback there. Just to give you a visual of performance at the moment, you'll see that new riders is picking up. Look, the report, we only had data till 3rd week in March, but I can say that over the last couple of weekends, the demand for the night service has definitely increased. And I think, as of last week, we're seeing in total about 250 bookings a week, which is actually, just to give you a feel, it's about 60% of our original pre-COVID target at this point, which I think actually, is not too bad considering the Omicron challenge that we've been faced with. So Andy, if you can move on, and just an update on rail. So I'm sure, obviously you'd all be aware, we launched last April. We were halted with this COVID issue in August. but restarted again late January. But within that time, we also managed to incorporate some additional, access directly into the Strand, as well as the ability to be able to serve Puanui. So yeah, there's been some really good work go on, albeit operationally that's been downtime, but yeah, to improve access into Auckland and being able to offer that, or those stations, is really a positive move. I guess to give you a bit of a high level in terms of operational running, we've been serving the public for 7 months, and in that time up to the end of March, we've carried close to 20,000 passengers, and the split between sort of weekday and weekend, it's about 85% are weekday sort of commuter type passengers, with the rest on the weekend. And obviously I realise there's more services in the week than the weekend, with only running Saturday at the moment. But yeah, the last couple of weeks with the 50% government initiative on discounted fares, we've actually been actively promoting that for the train because we acknowledge there is capacity. So yeah, there has been an uptake in terms of that, which is good to see. Yeah, and finally, just looking at, where we're at the moment, challenging times, but I think, key points are our ridership is increasing, the green line there, the Busset, and there, that's only up to February, but as I say, we know it's been increasing. Looking at figures back to the end of March. And that completes our public transport update. And I guess if there's any questions from the floor, more than welcome Andy and I to take those.
Well, thank you, Andy, and sorry, was it
Trudy.
Trudy.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure I got that right. Thank you, Andy and Trudy. Really, again, appreciate your time, and we definitely do have questions. So the first one is from Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Look, I have a couple of questions. Trudy and Andy, thank you for your presentation. Andy, first question is around driver shortage. And I guess I say this from a personal reflection of my son, who's catches a couple of buses home from school. And there's been sometimes, due to driver shortages, the bus just hasn't turned up. And as a result, he's given up riding the bus and has gone to bike. Now, that's just one little example, but what do you do to actually tell passengers who are waiting at bus stops that the bus isn't coming?
Okay, so I mean, it's hard to get the message out to 100% of people 100% of the time, but we absolutely do make best endeavours. So we've got updates on our Transit app. If you downloaded the Transit app from the App Store, it's very clear notifications on that around reduced service timetables.
Okay.
We've also put signage up on a lot of the major interchanges and facilities. We've got messages up on the website, and we also did a bit of briefing for the media as well.
Right. So does your signage at each bus stop say download the Transit app for the latest?
No, it does not. We've got over 1,000 bus stops in Hamilton, and it's extremely difficult to get appropriate signage out on every single bus stop.
Okay, so when do you expect to have a full contingent of staff again?
That's a really good question, and I don't have an answer for that. To a large extent, this is an issue beyond our control, and I don't want to sound like I'm passing the buck, but it is really a matter of how quickly GoBus can recruit enough drivers to operate the timetable that we want to operate.
Right, so there's no way of getting backup drivers, having a locum situation or anything? Or?
Believe me, they are operating as many services as they possibly can. So there's overtime being worked. Supervisors are working when it's necessary, and they've got relief drivers as well that they're pulling into the mix.
No, yeah, and I guess. Yeah, and just to add, GoBus are obviously our primary provider, and recruitment wise, they're doing a big drive on that, but also looking into sort of immigration options as well. But none of this happens overnight, unfortunately. But yeah, we're working closely with GoBus. But yeah, it's a wider problem, obviously, than just Hamilton and the surround. But yeah, significant challenge with that significant drop that we've experienced over the past few months.
Doing a big drive on it. Good pun, unintended. Great. Couple of questions around Flex, if I may. Are you keeping an eye on people potentially using Flex instead of buses? Because I think it was one of the things we were very interested in at the very beginning when Flex came along. I think was the original idea was to get you to one of the more regular bus routes, I take it. So are people using Flex instead of the bus or as well as the bus?
I guess, look, Mark, at the moment, what we've launched doesn't actually replace, I guess, any of the fixed route bus services. But our strategy is to do that in the future. And that's where, we definitely will be seeing a shift. But I guess our strategy initially was to get the vehicles out there, people using them, people getting confident with, pick up and drop off and a slightly different way of working. And then over time, we will be looking to phase out some of those, not so patronised fixed route services with this type of solution.
So ultimately, we're kind of heading towards 3 or 4 bus routes and Flex all over the place.
I think it will probably be somewhere a bit in between what we've got now and what you describe, at least for the foreseeable future. I would just add for what Trudy said a second ago. So we launched the evening service and the airport link on an on-demand basis because it's easier to give some people something that they don't have already. With the replacement of fixed route bus services, it is a really big change in mindset for a lot of people that actually you don't walk to a bus stop and wait for a bus. You actually have to download an app and book it. And once people have done that, it becomes like second nature, right? It's not a difficult process to go through, but I think there's certainly groups in the community that will find that shift in mindset quite a challenge. The other thing I would say about on demand is it's not a panacea. So what on demand's really good at is transporting dispersed demand, which is relatively low demand. So it's good in good in low demand periods like weekends and off peak, and in areas that are relatively that have a number of potential destinations. What it's not good at is transporting a lot of people from point A to point B. Like not good for school services, not good for commuter routes, but good for picking up a lot of those other sort of fringe markets that we struggle to deliver cost effectively and actually provide people with a service that they'll use.
Cool. Sorry for asking so many questions. It's the only chance I get to ask you, so it's fascinating me. The Flex, are you having the same issue with Flex drivers as you are with GoBus drivers with staff shortages?
Absolutely.
Yes, but at a much smaller scale. We're struggling in the same kind of proportion, so about 20-25% of Flex services we're not operating at the moment, but because it's not a fixed timetable, customer doesn't necessarily experience it as a missed service. What they'll get is a longer wait time, perhaps before a booking can be made to pick them up.
Yeah, I guess where I was heading towards was closing off that circle was, if my son, his bus wasn't going to turn up, he could just hail a flex. But you're not going to use those to absorb that service. So, no, that's okay. No, look, I'll grab lunch with you one time and bug you with all the rest of my questions. Thank you, Sarah.
Please do.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. Deputy Mayor Jeff.
Thanks, Chair Sarah. Thanks, Andrew and Trudy. It's really good to get an update, and there's some good things happening there. And I'm certainly heartened by the high frequency routes, as well as the flex service, the development of that. Can I just check? Because as Mark says, we don't get often to sort of check in with you. You mentioned the pressure on cost with dropping patronage and lower fare box recovery. I was looking at the report that went to the last Connections Committee, and I just want to make sure I've got the figures right. So Hamilton Urban Services, the net cost was 18.2 million for the year. Does that sound right?
Sorry, that sounds about right. I got my mute button on.
And between Hamilton and other towns, 4.2 million. So
yep.
Is that so? That's split. These are net figures. So this is split between the NZTA subsidy and what you're having to rate. Is that right? Rates and NZTA.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. No, that's good to know. Thank you. And are you having to, given the pressure, are you having to? You're going to have to put more in next year, or what are you predicting?
Yeah, so I mean that's a really good question. The situation at the moment, as you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts, yes. And it's every week or so it seems that there's some new and interesting curveball that gets thrown our way. The last one was the 50% fares initiative, but I mean COVID has been a significant challenge. So I mean, look, with the fare revenue, if you imagine, we typically take about $6-7 million worth in fare revenue each year, and we're down about 40% on that at the moment. So that's a hole that WRC have been wearing through their reserve fund. Wow. So I mean, part of that shortfall has been made up by Waikitahi, but unlike the first lockdown that happened, the government are not covering 100% of fare revenue as they did previously. So that's a definite pressure that we're under. But obviously at the same time, at the moment we're not delivering all the services that we'd like to be delivering. So there's commercial negotiations going on at the moment with GoBus about how much contract reduction payments will be putting in for that. Okay. But I mean, there's pluses and minuses in terms of the accounts. I'm not sure at the moment what that position is going to look like year end, but I would say that hopefully both these situations are not a permanent situation. So there's good evidence that we can expect to see patronage recover substantially, particularly with this investment in these high frequency routes and with promotion around 50% off. But yeah, it's I think we have to separate the short term from the long term. I mean, the short term is quite a difficult one to
That's right. Yep.
To forecast at the moment. Yep.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. A lot of moving parts. Just one other question. How many buses have you guys got, and how many are electrified, and at what rate are you going to progress to electrification? Like, when can we expect your fleet to be fully electrified?
Okay, so that's a good question. I mean, The answer I would give you is as soon as we possibly can. Unfortunately, there's a lot of constraints in terms of us being moved to move towards that. So at the moment, the way the public transport contracts are set up is that they're 9-year contracts. We have at the moment 2 main contracts in Hamilton, both of which were with GoBus, and neither of which are due to expire until 2024-25. Sorry, 25-26. The issue for us is trying to get those buses negotiated into those contracts, and there is no government funding for us to do that. So at the moment, we are looking at ways definitely for transitioning. We'll take every opportunity that we can get. We are beginning to specify electric buses in new contracts, but there's no clear answer for you on that one, I'm afraid, at the moment.
Oh, okay. How many buses have you got in Hamilton?
Just over 90, I think, are in the fleet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. All right. So you can't give us a date for when you'd be fully electrified?
I wouldn't like to give you a date, but I think we could probably say that it won't be any later than the start of the new contracts in Hamilton. But definitely, we'd like to see that date sooner.
Okay, so that's 25-26 is when new contracts begin. So
Yes.
are you saying you'll have 90 electrified buses at that point? From that point, at that point? Or is it a long, gradual thing? Are we talking like 10, 20 years here?
Look, I think there's work ongoing now at the moment as part of the Regional Public Transport Plan review, and there's been a lot of work done already looking at the infrastructure that we need as a regional council to support electrification. Which isn't insubstantial. The power consumption for charging 100 vehicles overnight is quite phenomenal. So there is a big infrastructure investment that needs to be made. So it's not going to happen overnight, but I can assure you that it's something that is being actively worked on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just wondering, Andy, maybe we could, if there's a lot of interest in the electrification of the bus fleet, I know the work is happening at the moment around the Regional Public Transport Plan to actually set out those targets and timeframes. So at some point, maybe we could actually have a more dedicated presentation on what that is looking like. That would be really helpful. Cool, thank you. All right, thanks for the good questions. Councillor Maxine is next, and then we'll come back to the chamber.
Look, thank you, Andy and Trudy, for your presentation. I guess my biggest disappointment is that we're not able to stay on track with the commitments that we're making to our community around the rapid transport and the rather frequent transport initiatives that you've got planned, and that it's down to the bus driver shortages. Look, I understand that there is some issues in being able to get, train and keep drivers. I understand that they are on a living wage as a minimum. Is that correct?
And Trudy, you might be able to clarify the pay rate.
Yeah, goodness, I'm not so close to that at this point, but I can definitely come back to you. But I know, we've definitely worked closely with GoBus over the last few years, actually, to ensure that drivers are receiving at least that living wage. Yeah.
And are you aware of any other recruitment and retention strategies that are being deployed to attract and keep drivers?
I guess I touched on it earlier, I think, with one of Mark's questions. But yeah, look, GoBus have been doing quite a substantial recruitment drive as such the last couple of months. Look, and what they have seen is actually some of those drivers that had left are actually coming back. So I guess that's a positive. But yeah, we're pretty much in a bit of a rock and a hard place. They do have a level of attrition going on, and I guess that's because you know, there are other opportunities out there for this skill set. So yeah, it is just a real challenge at the moment. Yeah, and in terms of you know, other sort of benefits, you know, there are sort of wellbeing benefits and other things that are offered as part of, you know, the driver's employment, but I guess that's not enough at the moment when there's other opportunities.
Yeah, I suppose the hourly rate is a pretty compelling reason to come to a job, although other benefits, paying for licenses, upgrading licenses, etc., are other opportunities. Is the Regional Council aware of any of those specifics that help to for that workforce?
I'm not close to the detail on, say, the licensing, but yeah, I do know they've got a very strong sort of program in terms of the wellbeing and sort of options that they support their staff in there. But yeah, no, I'm more than happy to seek seek the detail on that specific question and come back to you. Outside of this.
Thank you. And I understand also the flex drivers, they would have a different licensing requirement. And would that group of drivers be a little bit easier to recruit? Would you think?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a smaller vehicle. You don't need a heavy license, presumably.
Yeah, look, that's a good question. They need a small passenger license. What we've seen thus far is actually the service offering is quite attractive to some of the fixed scheduled drivers who are obviously delivering those services at the moment. So actually what's been happening is a little bit of Rob Peter to pay Paul type thing, as opposed to new you know, talent coming into the mix. So yeah, there's a couple of dynamics going on in that space at the moment, and I guess one of the challenges we are finding, I guess, with the evening service is, you know, running to 4 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, that sort of 12 to 4 a.m. is not attractive on, you know, a standard sort of pay rate. So there's an opportunity perhaps to incentivise, and that may attract, you know, additional applicants there.
And there was also a concern some time ago about the safety of drivers. Has that been resolved? Are you aware, or is there ongoing concerns that you have that need to be addressed further? And I'm thinking specifically about those really late hours.
Yeah, look, I guess those vans are CCTV live streaming. There's definite sort of safety procedures in place for any, you know, occurrence of, you know, an incident or what have you. There's a supervisor on for the entire shift, and, you know, they are there to also respond if required. To date, Andy, we haven't, and just help me out here, I don't believe we've had any issues thus far.
No,
I'm not managed fairly closely because, yeah, it is an exposure running at that time of the...
We get regular operational updates on the Flex service, and had an incident occur, we would have heard about it.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing I would say
booking.
about the on-demand services is that you actually have to download an app and register. So there's a degree of traceability and accountability for people that are getting on that vehicle, as opposed to a fixed route bus service where you can just wander up and get on without really having sort of credentials to trace.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for your answers. Thanks, Chair Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Maxine. We're back to the chamber, and we've got a question from, who was next around? Mayor Paula. Well, yeah, we can't see the order at the moment. Agenda discussion. Request list. It looks like Councillor Gallagher was actually first. There we are. There you go.
Yeah, mine's to do with, I mean, obviously just I note the focused report around electrification of buses, and I think that would be obviously useful that we really get in from an environment, and from my other hat as Chair of Environment, I'd be really interested in a kind of a bit of a micro-analysis of that, so we're across that, and I think that's important, and if thank you, Acting Chair Sarah, for setting that up. My one is more on Te Hui, so I'm just wondering if there's any other bus questions. You deal with those first, and then we go on to Te Hui.
Yes. Yep. Okay. That's. I think we're probably just taking all questions.
Okay.
Now.
No, that's fine. Look, I'm aware that we have Councillor Wilson in the virtual room. And I'm aware, I think that there was a meeting of the Te Hui, a working group yesterday, according to my diligent discussions around, and obviously to both the staff and Councillor Wilson, discussions around the ongoing, as I was looking at that, the extra services and also the evolving and developing business case in terms of the next move forward. I'm wondering through the chair if Councillor Wilson initially might make comment on that.
Oh, right.
I'm happy to chair Sarah, but I'm wondering if we wouldn't cover it at the next item, is the normal.
Yeah, I think so, for the external committee report, so for a direct.
Okay, I'd have it,
report back from
whatever,
Councillor
happy to do that then, fine.
No problem. Okay. Did you have any other questions?
No.
All right. Thank you. Mayor Paula.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions on the report. Can I have some idea if the Regional Council is doing any sentiment testing or feedback as the new services are rolling out? I mean, are they capturing public response to those in any way? Is there any data on that? Because, you'd want to make refinements if necessary. Are they there still?
Yeah, so I can
Thanks,
probably
Andy.
I can probably speak to that in terms of the flex services. So I mean, the great thing about the on-demand services is that whenever you complete a ride using the flex service, it actually asks you how your journey was, what could be made better, what wasn't so good. So far, consistently, I think we've got nearly 5 stars on all trips. So it's been pretty good, but we also get commentary feedback as well through the app. So it's something that we can very easily collect data on, and it is something that we do look at.
And thanks, Andy. And in terms of the wider services, the CBD shuttle and other bits and pieces, the general public, how often do you reach out to them to see why they are, if they're using it, why they are using it, if they're not using it, why they're not using it? Because I guess, there's a lot of really proactive and new changes. So.
Yeah. Really good question. So I think we do an annual bus user satisfaction survey around October every year, and we didn't do one last year because it was right in the middle of COVID outbreak. But we do do collect numbers on how well bus services meet people's needs, what they think of the buses, what they think of the drivers, and that kind of thing. So we get a lot of feedback like that. What's always been much more challenging for us is reaching out to those people that don't use the bus. And that's where I see joint working with the City Council coming in, is to actually ask people on why they're making their journeys in a particular way, why they're not using the bus, because we can get right into those people on the buses and them quite easily. It's a much more extensive exercise to understand people's sort of broader travel patterns.
Cool, thank you. A couple more if that I may, Chair Sarah. In terms of the average passenger transport rate, I must admit I've paid my rates to Regional Council and I didn't look too closely, but it used to be separately itemised, the passenger transport rate. I presume it still is on the rates bill, so I didn't look. But what is the average passenger transport rate for Hamilton at this point in time? And do you have data over the movement in that rate over the period of this LTP? So this is second year, third year, coming into third year next year. Have you got any trend data in how the passenger rate, transport rate is moving?
I have to say I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, I'm afraid, but it can certainly feed that back.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Sarah, I would like that data. I would like to understand, because I think sometimes Regional Council, and I remember I was once the chair there, has the luxury of flying a little bit below the radar in terms of their rates and other things. But as I recall, passenger transport always was a sizable portion of the rate for Regional Council. So I would just like to understand where it sits now for an average rate payer, because average is average, but and just what the trend is in terms of the increase or otherwise in the rates, just so we can understand that, if I may please, that would be good. Last question. In terms of what's happening with the medium density urban development and requirements that government are putting on us to develop 3-storey apartments potentially anywhere in the city with no off-street parking or car parks, which is obviously an intent to move people to mode shift, which is fine, but problematic in that if it's spread across the city and without having a strategic plan around it, it'll be difficult. How are you having any conversations with government or amongst your council about how you respond to the impost of this development that we're going to have? How you're going to supply it through your on-demand services or otherwise into those areas where people won't necessarily be able to have multiple cars, if a car at all. Just interested in how your planning matches does that make sense? How your planning matches the strategic and growth that we're going to be facing.
Yeah, so I think the relationship between transport and land use is a really close one, and it's bound both ways. And so we've absolutely been feeding into the City Council's team that are working on the NPSUD around what are those high frequency corridors for bus services, and I understand that has been an input into those plans and development. But I would also say that intensification on bus around bus services, existing bus services, isn't really an issue for us. It's more of an opportunity. So the more passengers we get on our buses, the more bus services we can put on, etc., etc. The far more challenging thing to deal with is growing outwards, because we're actually running extra kilometres, extra hours with bus services, etc., etc. So we'll respond where the demand requires it, and we'll try and be as proactive as we can around that.
Yeah, so it is about timing and line-up, I suppose. And I understand that the greater density leads to good passenger transport outcomes, but only if the timing is consistent. So I was wondering if you were having those kind of conversations so that bus services are in place when, but the trouble is, of course, at the moment, we don't know where that development is going to go with this new approach. So, okay, and I won't put the political question on you to ask you for your feedback on the NPS urban development at a political level, but I wouldn't mind seeing it if it could be circulated. If you could ask if we could have any copies of what the council through the chairman has reflected to government, that would be just very useful.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Are there any other questions on Zoom? We don't seem to have any, and we don't have any further questions in the chamber. We've had quite a long and thorough question session, so I'll try not to add too much more to it. But I did just have one question that I'd be keen to get your feedback on, Andy and Trudy, and that's around this, I guess, the staffing shortages we're facing at the moment, the fare box recovery and that electrification. I've seen Auckland transporters in talks with the Minister of Transport around their issues around fare box recovery and needing extra financial assistance. And I also note that there had been the intention flagged by this government to actually provide a fund for assisting councils with the electrification of their fleets. And obviously the driver shortage problem is something that we need assistance with as well to really urgently address. So is it worth us, what work is WRC already doing to communicate with the Transport Minister and Central Government around these challenges? And is there anything further that we could do, for example, in terms of some joint advocacy? Thank you.
So, I was going to say, Andy, are you better placed in that space? Sorry.
So I was just going to say that's a great, if slightly leading question. Thank you, Sarah.
Never.
So, I think there was some discussion at the previous Regional Connections Committee. I think you were a part of that, where there was an action to set up a channel of communication with the minister. But beyond that, we are not, as far as I'm aware, working on any particular lobbying effort.
Okay, maybe that's something we can take offline in terms of some of the other issues beyond the staff.
I mean, I would just add that the issues that Waikato are having are not unique to the Waikato. This is a nationwide problem. So there's driver shortages all over the country, and patronage is down all over the country as well. So look, I think there'll be broad support across all councils for some additional attention in this area.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a move. Would anyone like to move this? Yes, Councillor Mark and Councillor Angela, Chair Angela second. All right. And we have some debate first from Councillor Mark.
Yeah, thank you. And, look, thank you for your presentation. I can acknowledge your pain. You're doing a tremendous job up against it. Look, at the moment you're at this point in time, aren't you, where we've got very expensive kit out there on the road, and hardly anyone's using it because they don't want to. And it's a really tough position to be in. I get that. They should be using it, they're not using it. So at the moment, we actually have the perverse situation where we've got loads and loads and loads of large empty boxes clogging up our roads and our railway tracks, creating congestion, pumping diesel fumes into the air, in fact creating the very problem they're trying to solve. That's where we're caught at this point in time. I get that. And I know this because I ride buses, actually quite often. My son rides buses, They're awesome. They're lovely buses. It's just they're jolly roomy at the moment, and therein lies the problem. We all have the same vision, where a great public transport system will be as full as a Wellington train. I get that, but at the moment you're in a very tough position where people just don't want to ride the bus, because if they did, they would be riding the bus. So until you can get people to want to ride the bus, we're going to be in trouble. And so I would heartily, and I'm not you and I'm not the expert, but I would heartily recommend that we spend more time and more money encouraging people to ride the bus than making them or forcing them to use the bus. And this is why I get a little bit finicky about us spending enormous money on bus infrastructure to push cars off roads, because all that's going to do is change that negative perception that's out there about buses. And believe me, it's out there. People are starting to call the emperor's new clothes. They're seeing flash, beautiful buses with wonderful drivers who are doing their very, very best in very tough situations, but they're saying, wow, no one's on it, they're just getting in my way. So I really appreciate where you're at this point in time, but the public patience is wearing thin. So keep going, but please keep talking to us, and please keep encouraging people to ride the bus rather than forcing people to ride the bus. I'll look forward to my writer reply. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Is there any... I don't see any debate on... There we are. Mayor Porter, yes? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Just on this, I want to thank Regional Council for coming in and giving us this good report so we can clearly see the trends and so on. And I think we share the common desire to improve passenger transport the best we can. But the only comment, and don't take this as a negative, more as a challenge, that I think we face is the city is changing and changing a lot faster and in different ways than we ever thought it would. So with the NPS urban development, which this council is not terribly enamoured of, because it's like throwing a handful of seeds all across the city instead of having a strategic approach to where growth should go, which is around urban growth centres where there are good opportunities for transport, where you can provide mixed journey opportunities, bus walk, bus cycle, all kinds of combinations, because in big cities that's what people do. They walk to the bus, they get on the bus, they might take a train, they might do all kinds of ways to get to work. And the only way you can achieve that, in my opinion, is if you keep to things like future-proof and Hamilton Metro Spatial Plan and such, and plan out that growth in a reasoned way, because we can't throw money all around the city for passenger transport in the short term, because Mark's right to a point. We've got to put our investment where we get the best gains. And at the moment, I'm a little bit concerned that we'll have a bit of a mismatch. For a period of time, people are going to rely on their private vehicles. We do want to give them credible alternatives to that, but we can't force them out of their vehicles. But what we can do is make other modes of transport far more easy, reliable, and cost efficient, which includes what they pay for their rates. So you can't make it cost efficient just in the fare and put it onto rates. We've got to look at the whole model. I just want to say that frequency and reliability, and I've been involved in passenger transport now for about 15 to 18 years. I used to chair that committee when I was on regional council. Frequency and reliability of service has always been the key to success, and that's the bit we should be relying on. So I'm really interested in the users' satisfaction survey. Shame that it didn't get done last year, but I know why. But when it gets done every year, it gives you trend analysis, and that's really important. So I'm really looking forward to what it shows this October, because I think all these new things like the flex and so on will be incorporated and captured with that feedback. So thank you for your work anyway. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. Narelle, are we just going to ask? Okay, thank you. We've just turned off the cameras for the regional council staff, because I'm just noting process here is for staff to leave the table usually when we go to debate, and so we're debating to each other, not this is our way of regional council leaving the table for the debate. So let's continue. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Sarah, and really good to get this report. There is no doubt that public transport will always be an essential element of Hamilton, and it will become more important as we grow. So that's just a line in the sand that we need public transport. I am concerned about a couple of things though. One, I'm concerned about the usage. Looking at the report that went to the Connections Committee recently, I see the patronage in 2020 was 467,000. It's 2022, 263,000 is the figure that was in the report, so a significant drop. And it's costing us. It's good to get the figures for Hamilton, 18.2 million for our urban services here. A mixture of rates and various taxes. I guess the thing that really concerns me is the electrification or lack of. At the moment, we've got 90 of these buses, most of them thundering around without a lot of people in and emitting, diesel fumes. And we're encouraging people madly to get on these buses at the moment. I'm not seeing a date where realistically we're going to have an electrical fleet. I'm just not seeing a date. And it's quite disheartening, I think, because there's an awful lot of effort at the moment, an awful lot of talk about private vehicle use. It really worries, and emissions, it really worries me. And look, I'm really pro electric vehicles. I've got an electric motorbike, my wife's got an electric bike. I've got an electric scooter, so I'm really pro that. There's not many emissions coming out of the Taylor household at the moment. So it just really concerns me we're so far away from electrification with the buses, and it worries me that we're trying to build a case to spend, I can't remember, was it $6 million on bus infrastructure, expensive bus infrastructure. There's not really a good case there at the moment. There's no case to rush. What's the rush? To get people in buses which are emitting diesel fumes, what's the rush? We're already sort of struggling with a poor business case for Tahuia, and that's beginning to become quite obvious. So there is and I'm not denying the need for public transport, but I sometimes think we're on a bit of a public transport kind of drive in this council at the moment, and on all councils, and NZTA as well. But it's not a good look when you're pushing people onto buses that, are polluting the atmosphere. So, yeah, it does give me caution for our own spending and will make me rethink the spending we've got in our annual plan for bus infrastructure. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Chair Angela.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Yeah, look, I know that we all agree that public transport is really important, and we will probably also agree that it actually takes a while as well to implement. I think I sit on the Regional Connections Committee with some other colleagues, and I also have been appointed to the Emissions Reduction Working Group on WRC, and Councillor Sarah is the alternate. And so we're talking about what targets and what we can actually do on the ground to reduce emissions. And of course, one of the actually low-hanging fruits is and should be electrification of the bus fleet. But one of the other issues that we have at the moment is there aren't the buses available. The supply is just not out there. Even if we wanted to do it tomorrow, it's not out there. And we experienced this with the flex buses, the time that it took to find those as well. But look, I think I don't think that there's a rush on infrastructure in terms of ACC's investment. This is just minor safety stuff that should have been done probably years ago, and we're really only catching up. But I just in support of the flex buses. I haven't been on them yet. Sarah was going to organise a trip, and I'm sure she still will. But I think I've seen them at night and during the day. I think they're smart. I think they're efficient, and I think at $1 a ride, they're going to capture people. And I think they're quite innovative. I see a future, and I see my role on the Connections Committee as well as with Hamilton City Council as continuing to push the idea of us moving away from the big empty buses. And let's face it, the majority of the buses that we see around servicing our residential streets on the low frequency routes are fairly empty. But imagine if we could deliver the high frequency routes that we are planning on, and we're planning on it through the Metro Spatial Plan as well as both councils, that those be the big electric buses, reduce the fleet from 90 to whatever it needs, and then the rest is a demand responsive service of flex. That's the future that I see for our city, and that I think would save money, would be smart, would reduce emissions. So that's I guess where I'm coming from in the future that I see. I don't want to be stuck in the past with us complaining about empty buses, because we all know that they're there. It is time to move on, but things don't move quickly with passenger transport, and people do take a bit of time to move over. But I think with the innovation and the flex trial, I'm hoping we're going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Angela. Right, I will say a few words before Councillor Mark has his right of reply. Firstly, I would like to say I really look forward to Deputy Mayor Taylor reconsidering the bus infrastructure investment annual plan, because I'm pretty sure you voted against it already. So that's fantastic to hear. I'm glad to hear you've had a change of heart. I would like to address a few comments made around the patronage. Firstly, we have been in an ongoing pandemic. We do need to acknowledge that, and if we look at the graphs, patronage was going up until we started to have lockdowns, until more people were staying at home. So that is ultimately, in the bigger picture, a short-term trend, and we will see patronage go up again. Councillor Mark spoke about not getting ahead of ourselves with bus infrastructure, but we know with cycling infrastructure that if there isn't the safe cycling infrastructure there, people just won't cycle. They won't take the trip in the first place. Bus infrastructure is no different. Right now, we have bus stops people cannot even access because they cannot get across a 4-lane, fast and busy road. We have people with impairments who would take the bus but cannot because there is no safe way for them to get to it. That is the kind of thing that we need to address first and foremost. I haven't seen anything to date which is pushing people or forcing people onto buses either. So I do take exception to that remark. What we do need to do is encourage people to take the bus, and there are 2 key ways we can do that. And it's not even encouraging them, it's actually just giving them options that they want. Firstly, it's to make it safe and accessible to get to the bus and have the infrastructure that makes it reliable and on time. And secondly, frequency. And that's what we're looking at with a lot of these routes. Making it more frequent means that people don't have to think about the timetable. Just like you get in a car or jump on your bike, you literally walk out your driveway and you know that within the next 10 minutes your ride will be there. That's the future that we're looking at. When we provide quality service, people will use it, and we know that. We have seen the comet, and it's a shame we didn't have that graph today, because once we moved from 2 slower, more circuitous routes to 1 direct and very frequent route, patronage immediately started shooting upwards. So I would like to end there, but thank Regional Council staff so much for taking the time, and also thank elected members for the fantastic questions that we've had today. It's been a really good discussion. Councillor Mark.
Moving things. Yes, right. Look, I acknowledge everyone's points in this, and it's actually quite a peculiar thing. Mayor Paula brought up the fact that she was the chair of the regional council, and the chair of the regional council was our mayor. So the chair is the mayor, and the mayor is the chair. So we've got a bit of a merry-go-round, if you pardon the pun. And I say that, tongue in cheek, but what it does draw to my attention is that we've been doing the same thing for a long time, expecting a different result. We keep pumping.
That is not true.
Yep.
It's an assumption on the past.
What's your point of order, Mayor Paula? I can't.
It's incorrect. It's incorrect that we've been doing the same thing.
Is it incorrect that it seems to me? Because that's the point I made.
Councillor Mark, I think
just comment.
Try and
That's
focus.
not a point of order. That's a point of debate, Mayor Paula.
Focus a bit more on the issues rather than particular elected members.
Oh, certainly
in
wasn't
terms
having a
of,
crack at the personalities. Don't worry about that. Wouldn't do that. Goodness
Carry
gracious
on.
me. It seems to me that we seem to be following the same path, expecting a different result. So would that be fair? I think we need to move away from this constant investment in upgrading our wonderful fleet to moving into a more encouraging model. Councillor Sarah makes a really good point about cycling infrastructure not being safe to use, and research documents that all over the place. Ironically, the safety issue on buses is that they are empty. The safety issue around our big transport centre is that it is empty. And it does, and our research shows that crime survives in empty environments. And so until we're in the perverse situation, until we get people on these buses and into our transport centre, we're going to have a potentially unsafer issue. So we're caught in that trap that I was talking about in my very first speech, in my very first debate. Yes, there has been a pandemic, but what that has done is encourage people not only not to go out, but also not to sit next to each other. So that is going to take a long time. I acknowledge that. But again, that reinforces my argument to do things a little bit more differently and advertise and encourage. I highly believe that we're onto the right track with our high frequency and flex model. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I think we need to sell it a whole lot more and put some value on it. Sell, sell, sell. Because it is a cool option. I do enjoy riding the buses. They have been complicated, but they are getting simpler. I think the team at the Regional Transport are doing a great idea. All I'm saying is that we need to stop, look and go, let's stop pumping money into flasher buses until we can get them electrified. I was just up in Auckland recently and I saw they've got even bigger, even more beautiful buses with just as many people not on them as us. And that is, to me, a concern. That is where we're pumping loads and loads and loads of public money into upgrading our infrastructure without pausing and saying, hey, use the bus. So please don't take this as an anti-bus thing, an anti-public transport thing. What I'm saying is that we need to stop, look at what we've got, make it reliable, and spend more money on encouraging people through advertising to get on the bus. Simple.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. Right, we will go to the vote. So we'll just a show of hands, all those in favour of receiving the report and presentation, thank you. And on Zoom, excellent, thank you everybody, that's passed unanimously. Good, all right. We'll move on to item 8, which is the General Manager's report. Okay. Cool. Oh. There we are. So, as I mentioned before, we'll take this item by item. We'll start with the General Manager's update. So, General Manager's update, no questions there. Wastewater overflows mitigation. Submission to Ministry for Environment consultation. The Collaborative Corridor Agreement update, transport maintenance and renewal. No questions there. I do have a question on that one. And I see Eva-Lisa's online. And Eva-Lisa, sorry, I forgot to ask if there was anything that you would like to mention prior to going into the report.
No, just in terms of my update, and apologies for leaving the meeting, I just had a personal matter I needed to attend to, so thank you, Tanya, for sitting in the General Manager's seat. So my first item was a general manager's update, just to thank elected members and Māngai Māori for the support that our staff have been receiving, particularly during the COVID impacts. Our team has had some significant impacts, both being personally impacted by COVID and family members. So we have had our teams down to crews of less than 50% in the city. So we are working towards getting back on track and making sure everybody is safe and well. But I just wanted to personally acknowledge on behalf of our team the support we've received, particularly from this committee and elected members, Mayor Paula and Māngai Māori on that. And that was all, Sarah, so
Cool.
thank you.
Thank you, Evelisa, and I'm sure that elected members will be able to comment on that in debate. Your team's done a fantastic job. All right, moving on to that collaborative corridor agreement. So my question was just, I understand this is our opportunity with our renewals and reseals to put back better, a bit like we've done with Brooklyn Road recently. My question, I see Robin nodding, thank you. My question is just, how can we have a better structure around that so that where there are opportunities to put in some decent infrastructure, but that it may require some removal of car parking or other issues that require consultation with residents, that we're able to do that consultation in time before our big kind of program over summer.
So I'm happy to have a go at answering that, Evelisa. So I guess part of that is the plan. So around this time of year, the team are working through developing out what next financial year's program looks like. And that includes the resealing, both with the chip seal and for the asphalt. And then everything working well and not having COVID issues and staff shortages, that list comes through to our team at the 6th floor, and the likes of Martin Parks and Honor and also Simon Crowther and my safety team go through that and look at all those opportunities and look at how we can incorporate that into the programs that we've got coming through as well. So marrying that up with our proposed low-cost, low-risk program, for example, and looking for those opportunities where it's, it's never easier than when that nice, clear blank sheet is created as part of that work. So that is the intention. The Brooklyn Road was an example of us catching it slightly later than what we would have liked to, but we managed to get there. But certainly with everything going correctly, that is the intention, to get in nice and early and have that well sorted and work through all of that consultation well in advance.
Thank you, Robin.
Of the actual physical works happening.
Okay, that sounds excellent. And I assume there would also be that touch point with elected members in terms of any more substantial changes that could occur during that resale or renewal program.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That was my question on that one. I don't see any other further hands up, so we'll move on to the next. Oh, no, Councillor Maxine. Sorry, did you just jump?
Yeah, I did.
Good
Sorry.
timing.
Sorry to do that to you, Sarah. It's a different model of procurement. And I just wondered how tolerant we are for the potential increase in cost that might go along with a better outcome or supporting a better, more quality product or I think what happens potentially is that it's not just cost oriented, is it, Evelisa or Robin?
So yes, this model and the tender that we're going to be embarking on isn't just about cost. It has cost as part of it, but certainly the quality takes up a large portion of the decision-making process. And that was also the approach that we used when we went through and engaged Downers for the current contract. At the end of the day, the benefit of this type of contract is that we have the ability to work with the supplier to recognise the budgets we have in place and then work through to determine exactly what work we can deliver. And that may be, if we don't have the funding that we need, we then have discussions around level of service or the amount of work that gets delivered. But it's that flexibility with this contract that's really important for, I guess, those slightly more uncertain times that we've been living through lately, and that there's likely to be some more uncertainty, particularly with the likes of inflation and some of those sort of material costs that may be coming through for a period yet.
And I guess our this method isn't out of step with what might be acceptable to our other funding partners?
No, we've been working really closely with Waka Kotahi through the whole procurement process. So we have a transport procurement strategy that was signed off by them late last year. And then there's particular detail for the procurement plan for this contract that we've also worked with them on and had approval. So we're very mindful as you know, key co-investors that we need to make sure that all our systems and proposals that we're putting forward comply.
And I see that we have some sort of principles that we want to be able to have completed through the contract. How are those goals reported back to council and I guess to elected members?
So I guess I'll start with that, and Evelisa may be the finish of that question. So those are our overall objectives as set out on page 60. These go through and feed into the key performance indicators that have developed up for this contract, and for which we will be measuring the performance of the supplier on a quarterly basis. And there's various components that sit underneath each of those to make up that final measure, because some of these sorts of things is not a direct, you can't count X number of widgets and say that you've achieved that performance indicator. So it's about working through those. And these will be finalised with the supplier, because we are very much around the fact that this is a collaborative type contract that we're looking at. It's not a master servant type contract. A lot of these will then lead through to the types of measures and reports that we bring through to council with the quarterly reporting, and potentially some of the long-term plan sort of measures, but that's where I'm going to sort of hand off to Evelisa, please, for perhaps the end of that.
Yes, thank you, Robin. So in terms of the reporting will come through the level of service performance, non-financial performance measures through the Finance Committee in terms of the level of service that is set by Council, and also through the appropriate committee in terms of the annual report for this contract against those service measures. So I guess there's technical ones, that's very transport orientated, and then there's the community and the other areas in terms of level of service, that complaints, etc., that come through. So it's definitely noted that it's good to bring those reports through, and I think at the previous committee we had the Infrastructure Alliance annual report come through, so that there is visibility through a council committee on that to provide direction and guidance.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Chair Sarah.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Maxine. I note that we've got an item later today, and so if we, for the community-based committees workshop, so if we're able to keep to the most salient kind of questions, that would be excellent to allow time for a lunch break although I won't close down any debate, but just a very, a little reminder. Cool. Thank you, Councillor Mark.
Outstanding chairing, outstanding. Hey, a question for you, and I'm sorry if this kind of smooshes into the next item as well, but regards our submitter this morning, Mr. Evans, talking about the desire for cycle wands around the place. Do we have a costing on what it would, or how much would it cost to cycle wand just about every cycle lane we have to that level of that he was talking about this morning? Do we have costings on that? Could we somehow...
No. I could answer the question, if that's okay through the chair. The answer is no, we don't have a cost for right across the city. I mean, roughly you're paying about, I think it's in the region of $100 a metre for that type of sort of transitional type of infrastructure. But it does vary on the, depending on what type of separator you use, whether it's a wand or a concrete separator, to be honest with you.
Yeah, okay, I understand that'd be different.
Just further to that too, Councillor Bunting, there's also the maintenance of sweeping and road sweeping that needs to be also considered for that. So, there are a couple of costs.
No, so I guess, and I'll be upfront about this, is that, as you know, a lot of us are pushing for off-road cycle facilities as soon as possible, but our submitter this morning made a really interesting point that, look, until we get to that point, we're going to expect people to ride on the roads that aren't as safe as they could be. So I'm wondering if there's a way we could actually have a separate discussion or a briefing or something around that, because this is something we can't deal with immediately today, but that gives us a much more accurate costing, so we can, if necessary, reprioritise some of our thinking in the cycle and micromobility.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. I was working with staff on a motion to address some of the concerns raised in public forum. So I'm wondering if Narelle was just going to email that around, and we can also share it, hopefully, on the screen.
So that's along the same lines,
maybe if you have a look at it to see if it addresses, it's currently a separate motion to everything else at the bottom there, but we just might need to enlarge it. So if you wanted to have a look at it, potentially if you had some wording changes that you would want to address.
So could you read that out for me, please?
So it says, the Infrastructure Operations Committee requests staff prepare options for elected members to consider that will prioritise additional education and infrastructure improvements, transitional and permanent, to address walking and cycling safety on key routes identified in the biking and micromobility business case in time for consideration and the development of the next annual plan. So that's the next annual plan.
Next annual plan, okay.
But what I'm hearing is that you would like some kind of briefing. So what I'm wondering if we could note either in a staff action from this or as part of this motion, note a request for a briefing in terms of opportunities to accelerate safety.
And potentially invite Mr Evans and Bike Waikato and people along to it, so we can...
So maybe, is that better done as a staff action, Narelle? And that's something, okay, so we can
so
take
I could work with you on that, definitely.
And then I guess we'll work with staff just on the best way to set
you're heading the same place as I am, so I'm happy to support.
Thank you. Chair Angela, sorry, are you happy with that? Because I'm suddenly jumping ahead there.
No, that's fine. I think it's all elected members need a bit of a line of sight as well of all of the stuff that actually we are rolling out at the moment, and whether we could, where the opportunities are to accelerate. So if we have time between now and when we finish to have a briefing, that would be great. I'm sure Evelisa.
And
I'll be keen on that.
Alternatively, it could be a drop-in session given the tight governance calendars.
Yeah, and if staff could bring those numbers, I know it seems like an obsequious question to ask how much to cycle wand the whole city, but I would really like some concrete numbers, pardon the pun, on the cost of separating cycle lanes. That would be fantastic. Thank you. That's good.
I think just to feed into that to elected members, we do have the biking and micromobility business case. It's just working through its final stages. So that will give us a good opportunity to give you a briefing on that. And I think that that particular business case will help with prioritising where the work happens. So we can pull the two together.
Fantastic. I think it's a great result.
Cool. Thank you, Robin. And that will happen in the next couple of months, I understand, won't it? Because we have that business case coming to us for approval.
Yes, that's correct. Just one point I'd like to make through the chair is around it. The business case does contain quite a lot of financial information as well about costs of different types of infrastructure, so that will help the discussion. Yep.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chair Sarah. That's the best I can ask for on that. That's great.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. All right, so we're on to the biking and micromobility update. Are there any other questions on that item? I'm not seeing anyone. Okay, public transport infrastructure. Oh, sorry, Chair. Sorry about that. We were screen sharing.
That's okay. I just had a quick question. The second point that was raised by Phil Evans this morning, and Robin, we have had some discussion offline about this with the residents taking their own photos of cars illegally parked. I get all the difficulties that can come with, but he mentioned that we, in his opinion, we weren't aligned with some legislation. So I'm just wondering if you can comment now with our policy, or if that's something we need to look at again.
So I have a bit of an overview, but probably can't give a final answer.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that it's very clear that the parking wardens have to be satisfied when they take the action of issuing an enforcement notice. And at the end of the day, any enforcement notice that's given can go to court, and we have to be able to stand up in court and defend that process. And so I believe that at the moment, to provide the best surety of that being a successful process and not ending up with having to defend a whole series of tickets that are based purely on photos that we haven't taken, that the basis that we use is for the parking enforcement officers to do it in person.
Okay.
Because there is the difficulty with any photo taken that it is a point in time, and it's hard to know whether that car's moving or not, whether it's parked over a cycle lane, and they are entitled to move across cycle lanes. So it's about, I guess, at the end of the day, being able to be confident to stand up court to defend any enforcement issue.
I guess that feels like it's in conflict, and I understand the rationale behind it, but it feels like it's a bit in conflict of what we ask of residents to join Anteno, to download the app, to report things. So maybe that's we pick that up as a conversation as well, because I know all elected members, we're constantly getting complaints from public and with illegal parking and cycle lanes, and we all know this, and it's just going to get worse. So it's certainly something I'd like to look at and strengthen somehow.
The new cars that we have coming on board, so the license plate recognition, are going to help tremendously with this. Because it will enable the car to pick up, particularly parking on footpaths and that sort of thing, will enable a greater coverage of the city in a more timely manner to be able to respond to those reports that are coming through Anteno and those customer requests. So at the moment, we have one person that's sort of responding to that and having to get out and about. With the cars in place, we will be able to cover a lot more of the city more efficiently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Those are some really good questions, and I'd just like to follow up on Chair Angela's questions around the parking over footpaths, cycle lanes, etc. Currently, as a resident, it can be really difficult and frustrating to actually report it, and often you have, my understanding is the best thing is to call, but often you could be on the phone for 15 minutes and no one picks up, or it's slightly out of hours, so no one can look at it until the next day, etc. So are we looking at any options to at least make that reporting process easier? And I guess secondly, will we be having, I know we've been pushing some reports out, but will we likely be having an update around those automatic license plate recognition vehicles, and whether, I guess, that will be sufficient in terms of addressing the citywide issue?
Yes, I would say we can. They're just doing the final proofing just to make sure that all the systems are up and running. And we can certainly have a chat to the customer services team to make sure that we that those, being able to contact council in a timely manner is something that's an issue for a number of reasons, not only parking. So that's sort of a bigger issue that we need to take through to the customer services team.
Yeah, Sarah, in terms of the work program that Murray Hickey is doing in terms of the business or the improvements to the customer and the systems, it's all part of that type of opportunity, and just we need to make sure that we can respond to them all. It's really nice that residents can come and provide us with the service requests, but it's really important that as a council we respond in a timely manner as well, and we're resourced to do that, because often that's the back of house function is just as important as the front of house, and so those are areas that we are working on as well, but it is resourcing our crews to operate a city 24/7, 7 days a week. That is now proving quite challenging because we previously sort of have worked within specific timeframes. So it is something we're definitely considering.
Okay, thank you, Eva-Lisa. We'll move on to some good questions. We'll move on to the public transport infrastructure studies update. Okay, submission on the road user charges system consultation document. And I note that the motion, the staff recommendation, I think, was to delegate the chair and deputy chair of infrastructure to finalise those. There's a couple of submissions there. The road user charges, the recycling submission, and then the funding and fees submission. Is that right, Raul? So if there's anyone who's burning to, I guess, be part of finalising that, please speak now. Okay, but those will, as per usual process, also be circulated among elected members for feedback. Okay, a question.
Yep, thank you. And certainly not volunteering, but what I'm saying is, what I'm asking is, sorry, hungry. Do we? There's been a lot of burly thrown out by the finance minister, and I don't know who would be the right one to answer this. But have we got any hints about what's coming up in the budget around this area? Because they've talked a lot about public transport, more than I've ever heard, in their signals they're giving out. So does anyone have any insight into this, or is this submission going to be a little bit too little, too late? That's what I'm wondering. Right. Question. So I don't know who can answer that.
So. No, there isn't. I personally don't have any insights apart from a premium article that stated that there was a funding shortfall potentially because of the impacts, right, and the road user charges. But that's, unfortunately we can't provide you any more intel than we all read at the moment.
I suppose we'll find out about the time the submission goes through anyway. So, okay, sorry, just thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. Right, I've got a question from Chair Angela.
Sorry, I thought that I clicked on one of these links to a submission, and it took me to a tyres document, and I was going to say, well, Mayor Paula is really, it took me to a proposed product stewardship regulations, tyres and large batteries, but that's not here, eh? No, okay.
No, we're looking, the recycling one.
That's a previous submission that we've already submitted on, that one.
Okay, maybe I just had a dodgy link. All right, no, that's okay. I was just gonna, yeah, no,
Cool.
still doing it. Never mind. Okay, thank you.
No problem. And these will all be circulated. So I guess it's just up for elected members to also try and make the time to put in their feedback to those submissions. Yeah. Mayor Paula, did you want to add anything?
No. Angela's quite right. It's an area of extreme importance and interest to me. And if ever this was an issue that has been around far too long, Councillor Bunting, this tyre recycling would be it. And gosh, I remember meeting with the ministers over this an incredible long period of time ago. Tyre track, was with it. I want to know when do we go beyond tyre track and to doing something?
Okay. Well, I'll take that as a rhetorical question.
It is. Well, it was a question. When do we?
I don't know. No. Okay. There may be an opportunity to include that within the submission. So, thank you. All right. We'll move to the submission on the Waka Kotahi consultation on the draft guide to temporary traffic management. So this is an attachment. Is there any are there any questions on this? No. Okay, thank you. My only question was, Eva-Lisa, or is this largely just around the worker safety rather than how temporary traffic management is, I guess, done in terms of the impact on road and footpath and cycle lane users? Or is it everything?
So it's the whole gambit. Okay. It's about keeping everyone safe who works through this, who goes on that site, whether they're a worker or a member of the public.
Okay, thank you. Would it be possible, if we're not already, just to push hard on the issue around how, particularly pedestrians and people with mobility impairments and people riding bikes and things are thought about when we do our design for traffic management, because I've got a whole catalogue of pictures of roadwork signs right in the middle of cycleways, and I do get out. That's why I have so many photos.
Yes, that is. Yep, that's noted.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, we're on to the update regarding challenges accessing the city-state highway network. This is an ongoing, frustrating issue. Yes. I am, it could be mine too.
When are we taking a break?
Well, this is the very last item, and then we're done, aren't we? Do we have, we've got one more, is that, sorry? External committees.
Item 9.
We took a 5-minute break earlier, but I think I'm happy for us to take, I mean, if it's up to us, I guess, we can either try and power through this and keep our external committee update very brief. And we're on the last item for the General Manager's report, so there literally is only...
We've got this 1:30 meeting.
Yeah, so I reckon we could probably get through this in 5 minutes if I don't jinx it. Okay. Are you happy with that?
Not all of us bring food, so just remember
yeah.
what the best out of people, you've got to give regular breaks.
Okay. Apologies for that. This has been a rather a longer item. Okay. No, if this goes longer than, once we've reached 12:30, we will have a break if we're not finished.
Well,
if that.
That's cool. We just work out. Some of us may go home then, and the 1:30 meeting, which is the community committee meeting, which was another in the diary.
Yes.
So
Yeah, so that's
as
in the
long as we
diary.
can get if we're shifting that back slightly or whatever.
I think we can get through this
Yeah,
very quickly.
okay.
So.
I do have some questions on Te Hui to ask.
Okay. I wonder are they going to be a lot of questions on Te Hui?
No. Essentially, just for Councillor Wilson to update us on the evolving business case development
Brilliant. Okay.
and extra services. That's all. I'm sure Councillor Wilson
Thank
will
you.
be concise and to the point, but it's relevant.
So if it's okay with staff, I'm more than happy to move that that other one later.
Should we make
the
sure we have at
131
least
later?
an hour break in between this and the next?
Yeah, I'm more
item?
than happy with that.
Okay.
If it's okay with staff, I just need to check on resourcing.
Yeah.
but
Are we able to double check that? Thank you.
We'll be in touch with our external presenter that's actually leading that one, but we'll just see how far through we get this.
Let's
Brendan?
try and
Yeah,
get
okay.
through this really quickly,
Okay.
because if we can avoid having to move things, that would be fantastic, and give everybody a chance to eat. I agree, I'm starving. Okay, so are there any questions on this? If not, I will move the General Manager's report, and do I have a Deputy Mayor Taylor seconding that? All right, we'll show of... Oh, shivers, yes. We do have a second motion, and we have shown it before, but if we could please bring everything back up onto the screen. And we'll take them, we'll do all the debate, if there is any, at once, but we will take each motion separately. So has everyone had an opportunity to thoroughly read the additional motion there? Yep. Okay, are there any hands up on? Okay. If everyone's happy with they've seen that, read it all, then we will move to, so we've got a mover and a seconder for the first motion. What about the second motion? We've got myself and Councillor Mark for that. So let's move, is there any debate at this stage? All together. Remembering very hungry people, but yes. Councillor Mark.
Very briefly, I just want to thank Phil for his submission this morning. I think it was very effective. It's given us, it's very easy to race off and say off-road cycleways are the doyen, but they just don't happen instantly. So it's something that I think it's timely that we look and just make sure that our priorities and our spending, our very limited spending, is in the right place at the right time. So I'm looking forward to progress in that. And Chair Thompson, I think you've done a great job with that motion. I'm glad to support that.
Thank you very much for that. Very quickly, I'll also just like to thank our submitter, Phil Evans, today. And I think that the motion here will give us a good picture of what's happening, what's planned, but also with the briefing that we discussed, an opportunity to see if there's a way that we can more urgently address some of the, I guess, very immediate safety issues while we look at how we continue to invest in those off-road and longer-term cycleways and infrastructure. All right, thank you. Let's we'll take the first motion and we'll go with a show of hands, please. So everybody in the chamber and on Zoom, thank you. That's Mayor Paula. Thank you. You don't know what you just voted for? No. And for the second motion, a show of hands. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. That's carried unanimously. All right. We're on to the very final item, and we've got the external committee updates. Let's take this by exception. So we'll start with Te Hui, and then if there's anything the other members of external committees would like to raise, we'll do so, but otherwise take it as read. Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Yes, if Councillor Wilson can just give us a brief update. Two things I've picked up from the the workshop minutes and diligent, and also just from what he's sent through now, is just around the potential extra service, what that looks like, and just I'm really interested in the ongoing work that has been done in terms of the business case for the sort of medium to long-term upgrade of the H2A link. So leave it in Councillor Wilson's hands.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Martin. Well, maybe I deal with the latter first. The business case I've now attached to the document that I circulated to everyone. It's pretty self-explanatory. A first step has been undertaken. There's a timeline and covers quite a lot of good detail. And for brevity, I won't repeat that. In regards to the only two things I would bring to people's attention is the ETS work to make the trains, to add technology to the trains that enable us to track them in a congested environment is going well, and that will be completed by July. And what's relevant there is it will enable us not to have to operate each rotation of the consist with two locomotives. We'll be able to go back to one locomotive. So that will be good. And the second thing is I have to draw your attention to the decision regarding the improvement plan. There had been an aspiration that phase 2, starting July this year, would not only include the 6 trips per weekday, and that's really 3 return trains, right? So I don't necessarily agree how they articulate. It's 3 return trains, but they were hoping to also add an additional rotation on a Saturday, and that is now unlikely to happen due to ongoing infrastructural and maintenance challenges within the Auckland rail network until January 2023. Does that help at all, Martin?
Yeah, just so the 3 like the business case, I get just clarification if I can quickly flick back to the business case. There doesn't appear to be mention of the Tuakau Pokeno train stops there. I don't want to get too complex. Happy to go offline. Is that another discussion, different discussion?
Yeah, I mean, there was some discussion yesterday about Pokeno, that Te Huia could potentially provide that service for a period of time, but that ultimately AT may insist on adding their own services once that line was electrified. So that's the only brief update I could provide you on that.
Sure, but Te Whata obviously is clearly at this point very much in the Waikato region and would be long-term perceived as a potential future commuter stop for Te Huia.
Yeah, there's always a fine balance between every time you add a stop, you increase travel time, and that can have a detrimental effect on the perceived efficiency of the service. It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, in terms of just patronage numbers and the more so on seats, in terms of those, can you just clarify the evolution of the weekday service? There is an extra service coming in on during the weekdays. Have I got that right?
Yeah, so July this year, once the technology has been added, the ETS, the push-pull program enabling stage 2, once that's completed, we'll be adding 1 additional train rotation. And for me, that is particularly useful because it gives a much better spread of convenient times. And right now, if you'll note, if you take the first train down from Auckland and you want to return on the same day, you're really limited to 2.5 hours. Where obviously with the third rotation, you're going to be able to spend much more of the whole business day and then jump on one of those, the third return service. And so that's really getting to the point where you'll be really able to test whether there is demand, because you couldn't then blame it on the lack of schedule. So that should start in July, and then what we've delayed is phase 3A, and that would now start in January. And I have sent you the working pack from the meeting I had on Monday that covers all of that subject matter.
Thank you, and also on diligent, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. So we've got a question from Councillor Rob and then Mayor Paula.
Thank you, Chair Sarah. I hope I'm not keeping everyone away from lunch, but I do just have some questions on patronage. And I've had a look at the patronage report to 31st of March 2022, and just disappointed with some of the low numbers. You're talking about increasing the number of train rides, and yet the numbers are not as good as I hoped they might have been, given that this would have been the first quarter involving the full trip through to the Strand. What's being done, Ewan, and your group, in terms of how you might improve the numbers? And I'm asking this tongue in cheek because I notice that we're closed down for 4 days over Easter, 2 days over Anzac, hardly conducive to, a marketing campaign to try and get more bums on seats on that train. And that side of it continues to be a little bit disappointing. So what's happening?
Yeah. So I think you can be rightly disappointed that the types of examples you've just given over Easter still is occurring. And of course, that's to enable work on the rail network within Auckland to be done. And we're going to have this ongoing for the next 18 months. And so that's incredibly frustrating. In addition, obviously, we've had COVID and all the challenges of the lockdown. What we've done recently to try to drive patronage numbers up is we're doing a lot of social media, and that seems to be having some effect. And obviously with the government's most recent initiative, we've even brought the price down by 50%. And gosh, so if we can't attract people at a 50% discount, then clearly that is challenging. Having said that, if you compare us to the Capital Service in Wellington, if you compare our service to Huia to the Capital Service, our rebound from pre-COVID lockdowns is a lot better, significantly better. And so I think we have to accept that for the next 2 to 3, 6 months, it's going to be a real hard, long slog to encourage people to get back into the train. And I can imagine that's terribly frustrating.
Sorry, just one last question, Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Rob. I'll just note very quickly, though, that it will be difficult for us to push back I've been notified, push back the 1:30 workshop. So I guess we just want to make sure that we kind of leave at least 45 minutes for people to have a decent break in between. But we've got a few more minutes, so...
okay, sorry, one last... I've got lots of questions, but one last question, and thanks, Ewan, for your response. Is it wise then to be adding further services on? March the 8th, my analysis, only 34 passengers on the whole day on a Tuesday, and the Saturdays haven't been as good either. Is it wise to be adding further services on?
Well, keeping in mind that a lot of our costs are fixed, adding additional frequency, it's similar to an airline, adding additional frequency doesn't necessarily mean a significant price escalation. That would be my first comment. My second comment is, to judge a service, you've got to implement the optimized schedule. And currently what we're offering is not optimized. We have an early departure, and then the train comes back from Auckland, and then we sit, and then we go back up, and we're back. And so I fully agree that the third service will add significant redundancy into the product offering. And in light of the fact that the direct operating costs, the DOCs, are relatively small, that I don't think I think it's worth doing. Because then you'll really contest the service. You can say, well, look, we've got good times throughout the day. We're out of COVID. We've had all these promotional fares. We've optimized the schedule. Now let's start to see whether or not the market reacts. And I don't pretend to project what the outcome will be, but I feel that it's worth the try.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we've got our final question from Mia Paula. I like the way you frame that. Thank you. I was just Ewan, thanks for the amazing work that you're doing on our behalf. You're sort of doing it all largely by yourself, and we really appreciate that information that you share with us regularly. In terms of emergent services, capital connection things, did they see a similar track in terms of getting people from not being familiar with the train to regularly using the train? Was it? I imagine it wasn't a success overnight also.
No, you're absolutely right there, Paula. In fact, Capital struggled for a number of years. And Chris Allen, if he's on, feel free to jump in if you've got more data than me. But I recall at the meeting on Monday, the analysis was that we've, as in Te Huia, has rebounded much quicker than the Capital service. So, look, we're generating a step change, and I know there are a lot of critics with Te Huia, but I'm still convinced that if we play the long game and we implement our strategy, remember this was a 5-year trial, and we're in the first year, and we've had to stop 3 times so far with COVID, and we've had multiple challenges with infrastructure. That was nobody's, that was a challenge, but we are adapting, and I think we just have to have a little faith and give this more time.
Thank you. Just for the final question, 2 very quick ones. Feedback from users on the service, is that being collected as, so we can understand what, I see feedback on Facebook, everybody does, but in terms of, the passengers that are using it and the business places that are using it, are we getting any feedback that's useful?
Yeah, the general consensus is it's a really, really good carriage. The toilet facilities are great. The coffee they serve is excellent. We have an 80% on-time performance, and the other 20% is within 5 or 6 minutes. And so, look, I think in terms of timing of service, product provision, we're doing well. The critical comment would be the times of day that we operated, and that's why this third service in July, I think, will address some of those issues and make the service even more appealing. And you know what? I really encourage councillors and families of councillors to jump on the train. Go try it. And I think you'll be astonished at the quality of the product.
Thank you. And last question, in terms of being delayed because of Auckland's issues, what do you think would be useful in that space, me as mayor and you as spokesperson for Te Huia, to share with government about that? Because it does feel like we are held back by the continuous delay in massive Auckland transport at times.
Yeah, look, really good comment, and I agree. I mean, and I don't see it's going to get any easier, even with City Link when it's completed, because AT are determined to sort of be the driver of who and when people can enter into the Auckland network. I mean, I think Minister Wood is giving us a lot of support. I think we wouldn't have got Puanui or the Strand if it hadn't have been for your help and the Minister's help. I think we've just got to keep knocking on the door and keep reminding Auckland that a meaningful passenger rail service in and out of Auckland, interregional passenger rail service is essential, and that they in their planning just have to make sure that they are mindful that services like Te Huia are critical to economic development, and that they have to do everything they can to help us get in and out in a timely manner and keep their infrastructure up to date.
Cool, thank you.
Thank
Or
you.
just let me know what I've got to do. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, thank you for the good questions, and also thank you, Councillor Ewan, for some really informative answers there. Right, so is there someone who would like to move? Thank you, Mayor Paula, and second? We've got Councillor Martin there. Is there any debate? No. I've scared everyone off putting their hands up now. Fantastic. Well, let's go with a show of hands. All those in favour? Excellent. Carried unanimously. And that brings us to the close of today's meeting. Thank you, everyone. Apologies for rushing things along at the end there, but we now have a 40-minute break in between this and our next item, so that's fantastic. Thank you.
Well done.